Chapter 1882. Chu Li dodged and dodged Qin Zhao's punch. He pulled out his sword and turned around to stab him. This, Qin Zhao's eyes widened as he looked at the sword that pierced his heart. Chu Li pulled out his sword and retreated. He looked at the two celestial men calmly. Zhu Ziyou and Qin Zhao stared at Chu Li in disbelief. They felt like they were hallucinating. Although they wanted to kill Qiao San, they did it to warn Chu Li that martial arts were the most important. Chu Li's martial arts were weak, so he had to listen to them. Otherwise, Qiao San would be an example. Hence, they did not take Chu Li seriously. Chu Li suppressed his cultivation level. The crouching Bull Mountain disciples felt that he was unfathomable. However, the two celestial men did not think that he was a threat. They could take him down or even kill him. That was because they did not take Chu Li seriously. They thought that a warning would make Chu Li realize the reality and listen to them. If Qiao San was not good at escaping, he would have been killed. To them, Qiao San was just a servant. Killing him was the best way to warn Chu Li. They did not think that Chu Li could threaten their strength. They did not think that Chu Li would dare to kill them. They were not the only ones. No one thought that Chu Li would kill them. His swordsmanship was so good. Yu, Qin Zhao pointed at him. What swordsmanship is that? Chu Li said calmly, Cloud's slashing divine sword. Great swordsmanship. Qin Zhao forced a smile. Zhuge Tian, you're definitely going to die. Zhu Ziyou held his chest and growled. Chu Li pushed the sword forward. A cold light flashed, and the tip of the sword appeared at Zhu Ziyou's throat. Zhu Ziyou held his throat and stared at him. He wanted to eat him alive. Chu Li said calmly, I'm the young master of Crouching Bull Mountain. You two have no right to tell me what to do or threaten me. Go back to where you belong. He pulled out his sword. TSK. Blood shot at him like an arrow. He moved sideways and dodged it. He looked at the two celestial men as their bodies lit up. They turned into two balls of light and shot into the sky. A huge and vast heavenly gate appeared indistinctly on the horizon. The gate of heaven slowly opened. Zhu Ziyou and Qin Zhao arrived in front of the gate of heaven. They turned their heads to look back, still filled with resentment and unwillingness. Then they entered the gate of heaven. The gate of heaven slowly closed and gradually disappeared into the clouds. Everyone let out a long sigh of relief before glaring at Chu Li. Things had developed so quickly that they could not react in time. Now, they suddenly realized that the two seniors of the Crouching Bull Mountain had been killed by the young lord and had been sent back to the outland. Young master, Huang Tao shook his head helplessly. You're in big trouble. Duan Tian nodded and looked at Chu Li with a complicated expression. He felt that if he were in Crouching Bull Mountain's shoes, he would not have the guts to kill the two seniors of the Crouching Bull Mountain. After they arrived, they guided everyone in their cultivation, and everyone benefited greatly. They were like their teachers. Yet, the young master dared to risk universal condemnation and kill him. He really needed extraordinary courage. Everyone glared at Chu Li in dissatisfaction. Chu Li said faintly, They want to replace me as the young lord, saying that I'm not fit to be the young lord of Crouching Bull Mountain. Everyone nodded and then shook their heads. Although the young lord's morals were lacking, he had turned over a new leaf and had turned over a new leaf. He had also contributed greatly to the strength of the Crouching Bull Mountain. Without the young lord's forceful promotion, everyone would not have the chance to cultivate the Crouching Bull insight, and there would not be such a powerful Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu Li said, They did contribute to the Crouching Bull Mountain, but they did not have good intentions. Everyone will naturally understand in the future. Young master, why did the two seniors not have good intentions? Someone asked. Chu Li said faintly, Why did the celestials descend? Everyone shook their heads. Chu Li said calmly, I came back from the outside world and know the true nature of the celestials. The outland is fighting with the Azura boundary and needs a lot of manpower, so the celestials descended to recruit more people to the outland to help. Everyone was excited. This was a secret that involved the outland. Chu Li said, The outland has relaxed the restrictions on ascension. As long as one reaches the Grandmaster's boundary, they can enter the outland after death. Therefore, the Celestials want to increase the number of Grandmasters as much as possible and then let them die and ascend. It's a rare opportunity to enter the Outland, someone said. In the past, Grandmasters might not even have the chance to enter the Outland. It was a legendary existence, a place that everyone dreamed of. Chuli chuckled. Do you think meat pies will fall from the sky? Why did the Outland relax the requirements for entry? That's because we need the people of our realm to be the vanguard and the meat shields. Everyone, you must understand that if you die in battle in the sky beyond heavens, your body and soul may be destroyed. You may be free and unfettered in our realm, but once you reach the sky beyond heavens, you will be at the bottom of society. Anyone can kill you. There's still a chance, right? Someone asked. Chuli scoffed. Naive. Everyone looked like they were in deep thought. Chuli said faintly, did they mention if the Crouching Bull Mountain still has a faction in the Outland? Yes, everyone said. Chuli said, then the Grandmasters are the lowest disciples. They have to start from scratch. They can't even cultivate the Outland's antique study before they're sent to the battlefield. They're the first batch of people to be sacrificed. Everyone frowned. Dewan Tinya said, they can't be that short-sighted, right? They don't lack Grandmasters like us. If they lose a batch, they'll go down to the mortal realm to recruit more. Those Celestials who are successful in cultivation are more precious. Anyway, it's not a good thing to go up there. Just remember this. Otherwise, I would have gone up there long ago. With my luck, why would I worry about not being able to make it out? Chuli said faintly. Everyone nodded slowly. The young lord was extremely lucky. Otherwise, he would not have a fortuitous encounter to cultivate such a sword technique. He also had a high level of comprehension to be able to cultivate it to such a level. In that case, it was indeed suitable for him to go to the Outland. In the end, he did not go up there. Perhaps it was as he said. If the young lord did not dare to go up there, it was even more impossible for them. Chuli glanced at everyone and waved his hand. Go and cultivate. Before the crowd dispersed, there were hurried footsteps coming from outside. Xiao Yan and Murong Chun strode into the courtyard and saw that everyone was there. They glanced around but did not see Zhu Ziyou and Qin Zhao. They frowned. Chuli waved his hand. Everyone get out. With one look, everyone knew that the situation was not good. They walked out one after another while greeting the two elders. Murong Chun and Xiao Yan fist saluted as they returned the greeting. They kept staring at Chuli. Chuli waited until everyone left before he said, Elders, did you hear the news? Did you really kill the two elders? Murong Chun quickly asked. Chuli nodded. They wanted to kill Xiao San again. Xiao San escaped again, or else he would have died twice. But Murong Chun opened his mouth, but could not say anything. Chuli said calmly, they wanted to replace me, so I can only replace them. Sigh. Xiao Yan shook his head. Murong Chun said, we're indebted to them. So what? Chuli said faintly. How can we keep them alive if they want to repay their kindness and have ulterior motives? They're too greedy. Sigh. Murong Chun sighed helplessly. They had already been killed. It was too late to say anything now. They could only wait for the Hill Master to return. Chapter 1883. If things were that simple, Chuli could just kill everyone who opposed him and take control of Crouching Bull Mountain. He would not have to go through so much trouble and effort. People's hearts were complicated and could not be solved by force. He needed loyal subordinates, not dissidents. Force could only be used for deterrence and prestige. It could not be a method. The most important thing was still benefits. It could let people see a bright and glorious future. Compared to the heavenly demonic sect, the Crouching Bull Mountain had greater potential. He needed the power of the Crouching Bull Mountain. It was an orthodox sect that was open and above board. There was no need for them to act sneakily. They could calmly face all challenges and strengthen themselves. They could accept challenges from all directions and become a top sect. Chuli fist saluted. Elders, I will spend 2 hours every day to talk about martial arts. All disciples are welcome to listen. Young Master is going to talk about martial arts too? The two were instantly interested. They knew that the young Master was a genius. He learned all of his skills by himself. Xiao San was the only master who initiated him. The Hill Master's dislike of him caused him to be ignored. To be able to cultivate all of his skills on his own, he was definitely a genius. His comprehension must be amazing. It was even more amazing than the two elders. If he could talk about martial arts, it would be more beneficial to everyone. This made them excited. Chuli said faintly, "Let everyone see who's more powerful, the two seniors or me." All right. The two were overjoyed. They fist saluted and left. When they reached the door, Xiao Lian said, "Young master, let's start today. How about lunch?" "That's great." Chuli nodded. The two left immediately. They were afraid that Chuli would change his mind. Xiaosan stood aside and asked, "Young master, are you really going to talk about martial arts?" "Of course." Chuli nodded. Xiaosan smiled. "This is a good tactic. It can win people's hearts. It's very important for you to inherit the hill master's position." Chuli scoffed. "Those two old men are dead. Let's see who can still oppose me." It was supposed to be a smooth process for him to inherit the hill master's position. However, these two celestials just had to get involved. He naturally wanted to kill them and would not allow them to mess up his plan. "Young master, you killed them well." Xiao San smiled. Chuli glanced at him. "You're not satisfied without taking revenge yourself, right?" No. Xiao San waved his hand and said, "I know my own limits. I'm no match for them. After all, they are celestials." Chuli nodded in satisfaction. "Your ability to escape is not bad. You have to be more careful in the future. I will have a lot of enemies." "Don't worry, young master. I don't dare to boast about other abilities, but I'm definitely capable of escaping." Xiaosan patted his chest. Chuli smiled and nodded. After lunch, everyone gathered at the martial arts arena. There was a high platform in the middle of the training field. At this moment, the platform was empty, but there were already 1,000 people sitting cross-legged below the platform, surrounding it. Crouching Bull Mountain was indeed showing signs of resurgence. The entire mountain was filled with vitality, as if the sun was rising from the east. Everyone sat below the stage and whispered to each other. "The young master wants to talk about martial arts. Is it all right? The young master isn't much older than us. Young master is about the same age as us. What about his cultivation? Young master killed 2 seniors with a single strike. With such cultivation and sword techniques, if we could learn even 2 or 3 of them, we would be able to dominate the world. All in all, this is a good opportunity. I'm just afraid that the young master didn't cultivate the crouching bull insight, but sword techniques. Don't worry, the young master is a genius." Zhu Zio and Qin Zhao had already won their hearts and were deeply grateful. However, now that the two were dead, they immediately turned to Chuli. After all, the two's foundation was still shallow. They were also forgetful and remembered grudges. Xiao Lian, Murong Chun, and a few other higher-ups were sitting behind them. They listened to the whispers and discussed in low voices. "Senior brother Xia, will the young master be all right?" Murong Chun asked. Xiao Lian scoffed. "Although the young master is young, his martial arts are strong. Don't underestimate the young master." Murong Chun shook his head. "The young master has poked a little too much this time." He was not worried about this side. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was under the control of the Hill Master. Although the young master had caused trouble, as long as the others did not strongly oppose it, he could suppress it. However, there was one side that could not be suppressed, and that was the surpassing state. The elders of the surpassing state were not so easy to deal with. Because of a disagreement, the young master had killed 2 seniors who had contributed greatly to Crouching Bull Mountain. Especially the 2 seniors, who were the most important, they were also seniors. If the young master treated the 2 seniors this way, and they were seniors who had contributed greatly to the mountain, what about the elders? Would he do the same to them? Would he kill them because of a disagreement? Once such an overbearing young master took control of Crouching Bull Mountain and became the Hill Master, who would learn to speak loudly. Would they have to swallow their anger and be extremely docile? The elders were used to being free and unfettered. The Hill Master almost did not care about them, and they could not stand such an overbearing Hill Master. Therefore, Murong Chun could predict that the big trouble was yet to come. The elders of the surpassing state would not let it go, and they would definitely do everything they could to stop the young master from taking over the position. However, if the young master did not kill the two seniors directly, the trouble would be even bigger. The two seniors had shocking rallying power. Once they incited all the disciples to oppose him as the Hill Master, the situation would be set, and the Hill Master would not be able to suppress it. If he were the young master, he would only have one way out. He had no other choice. Suddenly, a green shadow floated down from the sky. It floated like a cloud and landed lightly on the high platform. It was Zhuge Tian, who was disguised as Chu Li. Chu Li glanced at the crowd, his gaze like lightning. Everyone felt their bodies tense up, and their hair unconsciously stood on end. The pressure of a mountain hit them in the face. Chu Li said, "Everyone, I'm honored to talk about the Crouching Bull insight today." Everyone nodded hurriedly. Chu Li said, "Everyone may have heard of the Crouching Bull insight, but everyone has a different understanding. Today, I will talk about my own understanding. It would be best if everyone can understand something." He paced with his hands behind his back, his gaze calm. The Crouching Bull insight, most people only know that the bull is a green bull, a powerful spirit beast, so they know that the Crouching Bull insight is powerful. Everyone nodded. Chu Li shook his head and said, "But everyone, there's another explanation for this bull. It is stubbornness, the nature of the heart." Everyone was stunned, and they quickly pricked up their ears. Chu Li said, "The Crouching Bull insight is the most taboo for using too much strength. It is the lightest heart technique, but I see that most of you have cultivated the bull's strength, and you see the Crouching Bull insight as competing with the green bull." Everyone was shocked, and they could not help but start discussing in low voices. Chu Li continued, "If this path doesn't work, then change to another path. If another path doesn't work, then change to another path. Don't be stubborn in one direction, or else you will be using too much strength." Everyone, do you know how strong the green bull is? No matter how strong a person is, it is impossible to go against it, so you can only use clever strength. But everyone, you see the Crouching Bull insight as a Herculean technique, and you train your strength with all your might. You think that cultivating the Crouching Bull insight will make you stronger than the young people. What a joke. Chapter 1884. Chu Li smiled. "That's why you're all cultivating wrongly." His expression remained the same as he said, "If you don't believe me, you can practice according to my method and the old way. Now, I'll explain the first picture of the Crouching Bull insight." As he spoke, he struck a pose. Suddenly, his aura changed drastically as if he had turned into a green bull. Moreover, it was a gigantic green bull with a monstrous aura, as if it could stomp him into minced meat with a single stomp. Chu Li said, "The first picture isn't about a crouching bull. It's about becoming a bull. How can you become a green bull? Only by understanding the green bull and being similar to it can you truly tame it. It's this picture that often leads people astray and makes them think that they'll become green bulls in the future." As he spoke, he made a punching gesture. Instantly, it was as if a green bull was raising its horns to pierce through the sky. It was a shocking sight. Does anyone want to try the power of the first picture of the Crouching Bull insight? Chu Li asked. Duan Tianya floated up and landed on the stage. He fist saluted. "Young master, let me try." Chu Li nodded and punched with both hands like a bull. Duan Tianya met it with his fist using the Crouching Bull punch. Bang! A muffled sound was heard as Duan Tianya and Chu Li's fists collided, and he staggered backward. Chu Li retracted his fist and smiled at Duan Tianya. "I didn't use my inner energy this time. It's purely physical strength." Duan Tianya nodded. Indeed, he did not feel any fist force. There was only a strong force, but it was enough to force him to retreat. Chu Li said, "This punch is a basic fist technique. You can activate it according to your heart technique. As for its power, it depends on your cultivation level. However, the power of this punch lies in its amplification of pure physical strength. When you don't have any inner energy, you can still use this punch to win. With inner energy, it'll be even more powerful." Duan Tianya frowned. "But why isn't our punch as powerful?" They all saw the first picture as a beginner's guide, used to train their bodies. They never thought about its power. It was like the starting gesture, just a decoration or a guide for later cultivation. Chu Li said, "That's because everyone didn't practice it correctly. I'll go through the intricacies of this punch in detail. Every movement must be precise. The slightest mistake can lead to a huge error. There can't be any mistakes. As he spoke, he began to stand. Everyone's steps were different. Because of their different heights, the steps required were also different. Some only needed to take small steps, while others needed to take big steps. Everyone got up and started practicing on the training field. Chuli glided off the stage and corrected everyone's posture. With the omniscient mirror, he could clearly see everyone's meridians, aura flow, and vital essence flow. That was why he could adjust everyone's posture to the best state and achieve the most precise state. Murong Chun, Xia Lian, and a few other higher-ups also went along with the flow. They posed with the others so that Chu Li could correct them. They were the most curious, and their suspicions of Chu Li deepened. They felt that the two elders could not possibly be wrong. However, as soon as Chu Li adjusted their postures and did not do anything else, they instantly felt their bodies relax. Their bodies were connected, and an invisible force surged from the soles of their feet. It was as if their feet had become one with the ground. Boundless energy surged from the ground, and they could not wait to release it. This made it impossible for them to doubt it. They had never felt this way before. Chu Li's movements were extremely fast. With just one palm, he corrected everyone's posture. He did not need to adjust it bit by bit. Even so, it took some time for him to hit 1,000 palms. The others were not impatient. They were all in a wonderful state. They felt like they had become one with the ground. They were the ground, and the ground was them. The ground surged with boundless energy. They were full of energy. They were better than they had been before. After correcting everyone's posture, Chu Li glided back to the stage and said, "I don't think there's a need to continue today. Everyone just stand for a while. When you really remember this feeling, it'll be better if you can stand by yourself next time." Duan Tinya said, "Young lord, we have nowhere to release our energy. We'll suffocate." Chu Li said, "You can't release it. Once you do, it'll be useless. This form is used to nourish and strengthen the body. The longer you stand, the better. It can increase everyone's strength. This is the real way to cultivate the green bull." "Young lord, what about the second illustration?" Murong Chun asked. Chu Li glanced at him and chuckled. "It seems like Elder Murong can't wait for the second illustration. Originally, everyone should have cultivated the first illustration for around a year to strengthen their bodies. However, since Elder Murong and everyone else is anxious, I'll talk about the second illustration." The aura around him changed. It suddenly became illusory and unpredictable. Then, he said, "The second illustration starts with the crouching bull technique. It's the first technique of crouching bull. It requires the circulation of an extremely hard force, and then it becomes extremely soft. You can freely switch between hard and soft. When you can freely switch between the two, you'll be considered to have cultivated the second illustration." Everyone listened to him thoughtfully. Chu Li fiercely threw a punch. A huge green bull appeared in front of everyone. It was so lifelike that it looked no different from the real thing. The green bull's momentum was unstoppable. It was as if it wanted to crush everyone in its way. His punch was aimed at Murong Chun and the others. Murong Chun and the others threw their fists at it. They were also using the crouching bull fist. Moo! Chu Li's green bull seemed to let out a low growl. It knocked away everyone's fist force and crashed into them. More than 20 people flew into the air. An opening was formed in the encirclement. The green bull disappeared into the air. Chu Li retracted his fist and nodded in satisfaction. "Everyone, do you feel anything?" Murong Chun, Xia Lian, and a few other elders and disciples who flew into the air were deep in thought. They felt the fist force and noticed something strange. It was as if it was extremely hard, but it suddenly became unpredictable. It was soft and weak, but it suddenly became hard and fierce. It was impossible to defend against it. It was so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. Chu Li said, "It's useless to blindly be hard and soft. Only by combining hard and soft and changing at will, it's truly magical." I don't have to explain the last few illustrations of the Crouching Bull insight. Everyone should follow this logic and comprehend it. I'm sure you'll be able to master it quickly. Everyone looked at Murong Chun and Xia Lian, who remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Chu Li's words. Chu Li smiled. Elder Xia, Elder Murong, you can go back and try. If it doesn't work, you can stop cultivating. All right, Murong Chun said slowly. The young lord's words completely overturned his understanding of the crouching bull insight. He had to start from scratch. It was not an easy task. He needed to fight against his original beliefs. The older one was, the harder it was to change. Duan Tianya and the others were more accepting. Chu Li glanced at everyone and said, everyone can give it a try. I'll start teaching 3 days later. Chapter 1885. Many of them were still immersed in standing, feeling their bodies being nourished by a powerful force and becoming stronger. Some of them even stood for an entire afternoon or night, only stopping when they could not stand it anymore. After standing for such a long time, not only did they not feel tired, but they were also 100 times more energetic than before. This strange feeling convinced them, and they also believed in Chu Li's theory. Therefore, most of them tried to comprehend the crouching bull insight according to Chu Li's theory. In the evening, Chu Li returned to the High Duke's public house and picked up Shao Qi and Shao Shi from the 100,000 Hills ice pool. They chatted and drank on Jade Guardian Island, talking about the situation outside. After the Zheng dynasty retreated, King Ping did not force them and retreated as well. The turbulent situation was forcefully quelled, which disappointed many people, including the celestial beings, so they hated Chu Li even more. However, they did not take any action as they were shocked by Chu Li's ruthlessness and determination, so they did not know how to deal with it. Fortunately, Chu Li disappeared without a trace after quelling the dispute between the two countries, as if he had completely disappeared from the people's sight. This made people feel that he had retreated after achieving his goal. Shao Shi was dressed in a snow-white robe. She took a sip of fruit wine and smiled. Chu Li, your ability to advance and retreat is very impressive. You should become an official. Chu Li smiled. I don't really want to hide. There's something more important. What is it? Shao Shi asked. Shao Qi frowned. Actually, you should hide for a while. When one reaches the peak, one will fall. No one can escape. Chu Li smiled. Madam, don't worry. I haven't slacked off. I've been cultivating hard. Your energy is limited after all, Shao Qi said. She was worried about Chu Li's future, not his illustrious glory. Chu Li nodded. After this is done, I can go into isolated cultivation. What is it? Shao Shi was curious. Chu Li told them about how he cultivated the blood dragon tree and combined it with the soaring grass to create a master. The two ladies could not help but be excited after listening to him. If what Chu Li said was true, the High Duke's public house's strength would increase explosively. They could even compete with the 4 major sects and suppress the Lung family. So they would not have to care about the Lung family anymore. Shao Shi said, if that's the case, Crouching Bull Mountain is very important. Actually, you can also look for Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Snow Lunar Pavilion is not suitable. It's hard to go against their feelings. I can't bring myself to do it. That's true. Shao Shi nodded. Is everything going well at Crouching Bull Mountain? There's a small problem, Chu Li said. The blood dragon fruit was about to ripen. He had already harvested the soaring grass and was refining the soaring elixir. He couldn't wait to cultivate the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. He also couldn't wait to get his hands on the heavenly star jade stamp. Both were of utmost importance. He had a premonition that the Azuras would soon descend in large numbers, and that would truly be the time of chaos. His time was tight, and he needed to complete it as soon as possible. Shao Shi said, why don't we ask Lu Yurong to come over and give us some ideas? Shao Qi glared at her. Co Shi pursed her lips and smiled. Lu Yurong has the most cunning ideas. The two of you working together to scheme against others is invincible. Chu Li said, she's also having a hard time over there. Forget it. He already knew that the 9 Heavens Mystic Fairy sect had also sent 2 celestial beings to Lu Yurong's side. They insisted on teaching her the continuation mantra of a 9 Heavens Mystic Fairy power and wanted to take her as a disciple. Lu Yurong was annoyed but helpless. Looks like you're still in contact with Lu Yurong. Co Shi's smile widened, and she glared at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi looked at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. I met her by chance. Do you want to consume the blood dragon fruit, madam? Is it still useful for me to consume it now? Xiao Qi asked. Chu Li nodded. It's still useful. Even if it can increase one's power, it can still strengthen one's body. Xiao Qi asked, what about second eldest sister? Chu Li smiled. It should be useful. Co Shi scoffed. My cultivation level isn't weak anymore. Chu Li quickly nodded. Xiao Qi said, second eldest sister, you started cultivating late. No matter how talented you are, there's still a process. Isn't it the same for Chu Li? I dare not compare myself to Hero Xiao. Xiao Shi scoffed. Xiao Qi chuckled. Chu Li coughed. I'll go back to Crouching Bull Mountain to take a look. Go. Don't worry here. No one will dare to harm us, Xiao Shi said. Chu Li nodded. His relationship with the Grandmaster seemed to have eased up a little. Under such circumstances, the Grandmaster would not take the initiative to attack them. They could stay in the High Duke's public house without worry, and there was no need to return to the 100,000 Hills. On the afternoon of the third day, after lunch, Chu Li appeared at the martial arts field again. He stood on the high platform and looked down at the crowd. He asked calmly, do you have any new insights? Duan Tianya sighed. I've learned a lot. According to what the young lord said, after comprehending the Crouching Bull insight again, my cultivation has improved greatly. Everyone nodded. Morong Chun said, how did the young lord know this? I don't think the Crouching Bull insight mentioned anything about it. Chu Li said, I've read many notes from ancient times, and I've seen the records of Crouching Bull Mountain. It said that the founder of Crouching Bull Mountain's fist was as fast as lightning, and his fist was as light as the clouds. It was earth-shattering, and no one could stop it. He founded the Crouching Bull Mountain. Everyone had a confused look on their faces. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. If you want to improve your comprehension, the key is to read books. Start with some miscellaneous books to increase your knowledge. Otherwise, if you just blindly cultivate, you'll inevitably fall behind. Even if you can improve by cultivating diligently, your progress will be slow. Did the young lord think of it based on these records? Morong Chun asked. Chu Li said, these records reminded me that the Crouching Bull insight might not be as I imagined it to be. It's not always strong and overbearing, and one strength can defeat 10 people. But if you think about it from a different perspective, you'll suddenly see the light, and everything can be understood. He continued, what I've said just now is the truest insight. If you want to have comprehension and cultivate your martial arts to the peak, it'll be difficult if you don't read enough books, unless you're born with talent. Only then did everyone take him seriously, and they nodded slowly. Chu Li continued, as long as you master this, the rest is just branches and leaves. Think about it slowly, and you'll eventually find a solution. If you have any doubts, you can ask me in the future. He glided away after he finished speaking. Everyone was a little disappointed, and they wanted to ask a few more questions. They had many questions in the process of comprehension, and they wanted Chu Li to answer them. When they wanted to look for Chu Li the next day, they were told that the young lord had already left the mountain with Elder Xia and went to the surpassing state. Everyone felt melancholy, and they felt anxious. However, Xiaoxin calmly told everyone that the young lord purposely did this so that everyone could comprehend it on their own. There was only one part of the Crouching Bull insight, but everyone had different insights, and the martial arts that they comprehended would be the most suitable for them. Everyone immediately felt a deep sense of respect, and they went back to isolated cultivation and high spirits. The entire Crouching Bull Mountain was full of vitality again. The disciples went in, and their strength increased again. In the evening, the sun set in the west, and the towering mountain peak in front of Chu Li was red. This mountain peak seemed to reach the sky, and the surrounding mountains gave Chu Li the illusion that he had entered 100,000 Hills. Although these mountains were not as rich in spiritual energy as 100,000 Hills, and were not as heavy as 100,000 Hills, it was enough to make people feel small. The surpassing state is here? Chu Li pointed at the towering mountain peak. Xiao Lian nodded. It's on the mountain. With the omniscient mirror, he saw that the towering mountain peak was covered in lush trees, and no signs of human habitation could be seen. However, there was a small valley halfway up the mountain, and there was a formation set up in the valley. It could be hidden from the eyes of others, but it could not be hidden from the omniscient mirror. Chuli nodded emotionally. I didn't expect it to be so far away from Crouching Bull Mountain. He estimated that Crouching Bull Mountain was thousands of miles away from here. Chapter 1886. This is the surpassing state. Young master, let's go up. Xiao Lian turned around and said. Chuli nodded slowly. Xiao Lian hesitated for a moment. Young master, now that you've entered the surpassing state, it's better to speak less. Chuli raised his eyebrows and scoffed. Elder Xia, what are you trying to say? I'm afraid the surpassing state has already received the news from inside the mountain, Xiao Lian said. Chuli replied, Yes. Xiao Lian said, I'm afraid that the young master has angered the elders by killing the 2 seniors. Now, there are 6 great elders guarding the surpassing realm, not 2. Chuli said faintly, the elders in Victory Boundary have their own duties. Do they still have the leisure to care about the matters in the mountain? He already knew that there were 4 more elders in the surpassing state. One of the 6 great elders was an array formation elder. He specialized in guarding the operation of the surpassing realm array formation to prevent any problems from happening to the array formation. He was also very familiar with the array formation Tao. This was the most important elder because the art of formations was mysterious and unpredictable. It required an extremely high talent and a genius to learn it. Crouching Bull Mountain could not compare to the 4 major sects, so it was not as attractive to genius disciples. Hence, it was very difficult to find such a genius. Therefore, every formation prodigy was extremely precious, even more so than a grandmaster. The other 2 elders were the cultivation imparting elders. They were responsible for the martial arts guidance of the disciples in the surpassing realm. The last 3 elders were the guardian elders. They were responsible for the defense of the surpassing realm and cooperated with the formation elders. Once there was an invasion from the outside, the guardian elders had to step forward. The surpassing realm was hidden. The disciples were often blindfolded and brought into the surpassing realm. They did not know where it was. When they left the surpassing realm, they were also sent out by the elders. There were less than 10 people in the entire Crouching Bull Mountain who knew where the surpassing state was. Therefore, even though their responsibilities were heavy, the 6 grand elders were still very free. It was inevitable that they would worry about the matters of Crouching Bull Mountain. Xiao Lian said, the elders are also concerned about Crouching Bull Mountain, so it's inevitable for them to be more involved. Then, do they have the authority to appoint and dismiss the Hill Master? Chuli asked calmly. Xiao Lian shook his head. Chuli scoffed. They don't have the right to appoint or dismiss the Hill Master, but they can interfere with who becomes the Hill Master? Yes. Xiao Lian nodded and said, that's because those who enter the Grandmaster's boundary have to receive guidance and protection from the elders in the surpassing state. So, it has a great impact on the disciples. All the Grandmasters in the entire mountain have to give them some face. Chuli said coldly, you're using public facilities for your own personal use. You're really taking advantage of your seniority. Young lord, Xiao Lian hurriedly said, they're not like the 2 seniors, you can't kill them. Chuli said, don't worry, Elder Xia. I won't kill them. Harmony is the most important thing. We're all one family, so we can sit down and talk things out. The 6 elders don't understand the young master, so everyone has misunderstood. Xiao Lian secretly let out a sigh of relief. These 6 elders all wanted to replace the young lord. Chuli calmly said, then let's sit down and talk. Elder Xia, it's time to go up, right? All right, let's go. Xiao Lian said solemnly. The 2 of them glided up and stepped on the treetops like 2 shadows. After a while, they were halfway up the mountain and in front of a ravine. Xiao Lian's body moved like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he hit 16 pine trees with his palm. These 16 pine trees were old and strong. They were tall enough to reach the sky. They were all old trees that were more than 100 years old. After being hit by his palm, they only shook a little and nothing else happened. Chuli squinted his eyes slightly and was greatly impressed by this formation. This formation was already integrated with nature and was one with heaven and earth, so it was difficult to notice the existence of the formation. The fluctuation of spiritual energy and the surrounding spiritual energy were one. Unless one was as sensitive as him and had a divine power like the omniscient mirror, it would be difficult to find the surpassing state. This was definitely not the work of an ordinary master. Crouching Bull Mountain did have a master in the past. Xiaolian glided to his side and said, "Young lord, let's go in." Chuli nodded. Xiaolian led the way in front and said, "If it wasn't for the previous secret signal, we wouldn't be able to enter. Even if we did, we would fall into the formation and our lives would be in danger." Chuli said, "Has anyone broken through the surpassing state?" "Not yet." Xiaolian shook his head and said, "We've done it very carefully, and we've been inconspicuous all these years, so they didn't have any ideas about our surpassing state." Chuli said faintly, "The more it is like this, the more careful we have to be. It's inevitable that we'll be careless. The Celestials won't let go of the surpassing state." "Yes," Xiaolian said in a low voice. He was on guard. As an elder of Crouching Bull Mountain, he had enough channels to collect news from the outside world. He already knew about the actions of these Celestials, so he was not so angry about the death of the two seniors. After all, as a Celestial, he had to be on guard. The two of them walked toward a stone wall and forcefully walked forward. When they collided with the stone wall, they suddenly saw a bright and beautiful valley. It was as warm as spring, and the fragrance of flowers and the chirping of birds filled the air. It was simply a land of paradise. 6 figures descended from the sky. Among them was Hu Huarong, who had brought his disciples to challenge him. His round figure was still smiling, but it contained a sense of majesty as he stared at him solemnly. Chuli frowned. Hu Huarong's martial arts had been crippled by him back then. How did he recover, and even recover his cultivation level? It seemed that he really had a fortuitous encounter. Xiaolian fist saluted. "Greetings, Masters Junior. Why did you bring the young lord here?" Hu Huarong frowned and stroked his silver beard. "Logically, the young lord is not qualified to enter the surpassing state." Chuli smiled without saying a word. Xiaolian said, "If the young lord wants to see the Hill Master, he naturally has to come here." The Hill Master is an isolated cultivation. He won't see anyone." Hu Huarong said in a low voice, "Let's go back and wait. When the Hill Master comes out, he will naturally leave the surpassing state. The Hill Master needs to report about the young lord killing the two Celestials. The elders in the mountain can't make a decision. When can the Hill Master come out?" Xiaolian said in a low voice. "The Hill Master is comprehending the divine technique. Once he succeeds, it will be a blessing for Crouching Bull Mountain. How can we disturb him?" Another slender elder said slowly, "As for the killing of the 2 sect seniors, we really need to investigate. There are sect seniors. If the juniors treat us like this, how should we deal with them?" Xiaolian quickly said, "It's not the same, Elder Bai. The young lord is not targeting the sect seniors, but the Celestials. Everyone knows that the Celestials do not have good intentions. Regardless of whether the 2 sect seniors have good intentions or not, it's obvious that they have done us a great favor. Biting the hand that feeds us is not the style of the sect, and we can't let this trend grow." Elder Bai frowned. Hu Huarong said slowly, "Even if you're dissatisfied, you can let the mountain chieftain make the decision, or even the elders. How can you kill someone so rashly? This is simply treason and heresy. How can you continue to be the mountain chieftain with such behavior?" Elder Bai sighed. "If the Hill Master does this, we don't know what kind of dangerous situation he will bring Crouching Bull Mountain into. It's better to be cautious." "That's right. The Hill Master must be cautious in his choice." The other 4 elders nodded. Chuli squinted his eyes and smiled without saying a word. Xiaolian, on the other hand, was slightly anxious. He said in a low voice, "The Hill Master's matters should be decided by the Hill Master. As elders, we can't overstep our boundaries. We can't make an exception." Who said we overstepped our boundaries? We're just saying, we'll let the Hill Master decide what to do. Hu Huarong smiled. He turned his head to another elder with a yellow face and asked, Senior Brother Jean, am I right? Chapter 1887. The yellow-faced elder nodded slowly. As elders, we only have the right to make suggestions. We do not have the right to make decisions. Whoever becomes the next Hill Master will be decided by the Hill Master alone. There is no need to say more. Yes, the other 5 elders said in a deep voice. Truly closed fists saluted and smiled. Greetings, Elder Jean. Although he had never seen him before, he knew that this was Jean Yi. Originally, there were only 2 people guarding the surpassing state, Jean Yi and Hu Huarong. After crouching Bull Mountain's strength grew, they sent another 4 elders over to help. Truly guessed that this was also a method of dividing power. It was a choice that Zhuge Feng had no choice but to make. Otherwise, under Jean Yi and Hu Huarong's control, the surpassing state would be like a mountain outside of the mountain, out of crouching Bull Mountain's control. At the moment, it seemed like Zhuge Feng's plan had failed. The 4 elders that were sent over had all submitted to Jean Yi. After all, Jean Yi's prestige was extremely high, and he was the eldest senior brother. These elders had nothing to say about submitting to Jean Yi. Truly scanned the omniscient mirror and saw through their thoughts. He sighed to himself. Zhuge Feng still could not win against Jean Yi. He suddenly looked up at the sky. Above the clouds, the divine gate faintly appeared and slowly opened. Then, a beam of light rose from the valley and rushed to the sky. In the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the divine gate. Chu Li's expression changed. It was Zhuge Feng. Jean Yi and the others had good eyesight. They were shocked to see Zhuge Feng. Xiao Lian shouted, Hill Master! Zhuge Feng seemed to be looking down at everyone. His gaze finally landed on Chu Li. He shook his head and turned to enter the divine gate. The divine gate slowly closed and disappeared into the clouds. Xiao Lian's expression was extremely ugly. He brought Chu Li here to see the Hill Master. He wanted the Hill Master to solidify Chu Li's position and become the next Hill Master. He had already announced that Zhuge Tian would be the next Hill Master in Crouching Bull Mountain. However, he did not announce it to the people of the surpassing state. As long as the Hill Master said it, Jean Yi and the others could only obey no matter how powerful they were. This was the authority of the Hill Master. However, they did not expect that before they could see the Hill Master would ascend to the sky. It was obvious that something went wrong with his cultivation. Truly scoffed. No wonder everyone is blocking here. Looks like you all know the Hill Master ascended. Hu Huarong was shocked. Zhuge Tian, don't talk nonsense. The Hill Master is an isolated cultivation in a secret place. We don't even know where he is. How would we know that the Hill Master has ascended to heaven? Daunted to us. Jean Yi shook his head. You're so young, but your heart is so vicious. He did not expect Zhuge Tian to react so quickly and take the initiative to attack first. This was not something an ordinary person could do. It required sufficient intelligence. Zhuge Tian was so powerful. If he really became the Hill Master, they would not have a good life. Hence, they had to stop him. Xiao Lian revealed a hesitant expression and looked suspiciously at the 6 Grand Elders. Hu Huarong shouted in a deep voice, Little Xia, why are you looking at me like that? Tian, who to say? Tian, to you. To know. To do, to you. To not to. To. As long as you know, Hu Huarong replied snappily. No matter how dissatisfied we are with Mountain Chieftain, we won't go so far as to not be able to meet our ancestors. In the future, we still have to ascend to the realm beyond heaven. Xiao Lian nodded lightly. He believed in this point. If he really committed the act of murdering the Mountain Chieftain, there would definitely be no place for him in the future. Even if he could live freely here for a while, once he reached the realm beyond heavens, he would definitely be severely punished. His life would be worse than death. Hu Huarong glared at Chu Li. Zhuge Tian, you're gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Chu Li shook his head. I don't believe it either, but this is too much of a coincidence. Don't you think so, elders? Why was my path blocked the moment I reached the surpassing state? Why was I not allowed to see the mountain chieftain? Of all times, mountain chieftain ascended to heaven. Hu Huarong scoffed. We don't want you to see the mountain chieftain, but we have no intention of harming her. They did not want to harm the hill master, but rather, they wanted to teach Zhuge Tian a lesson and cause him to lose all of his dignity. This would cause him to fall in the hearts of the younger disciples and reduce their support, allowing Lu Tianji to regain his position. Lu Tianji was like a fish in water in the surpassing state. He made friends with the younger disciples and had a good relationship with them. As long as Zhuge Tian's prestige was reduced, Lu Tianji's chances would increase greatly. As for the elders of their generation, they did not need to say much. As long as they mentioned it, they would definitely support Lu Tianji. In this way, everyone would submit to Lu Tianji, and Zhuge Feng was a person who prioritized public interests over private interests. As long as everyone wholeheartedly submitted to Lu Tianji, he would not take the risk of everyone in Crouching Bull Mountain being disunited and forcefully push Zhuge Tian to the position. Chu Li said, "It's hard to predict a person's heart. Who knows? For the position of mountain chieftain, everyone personally went in a battle. How could you not do something even more excessive?" He did not wait for everyone to speak and said in a deep voice, "Back then, the mountain chieftain personally announced that I would be the next mountain chieftain. Everyone must have heard of this, right? As long as you haven't become the mountain chieftain, there can be variables." Hu Huarong scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. Now that the mountain chieftain has ascended to heaven, is there still a dispute over the position of mountain chieftain? Hu Huarong's face darkened. Let's wait for everyone to gather before discussing the position of mountain chieftain. Jin Yi said in a deep voice. The few of us should also move and return to the mountain to take a look. Chu Li said, the elders guard the surpassing state. It's a great responsibility. How can you leave so easily? If they returned, they would definitely stir up trouble and make Crouching Bull Mountain restless. Junior brother Jing and the others are enough to guard here. Back then, it was only me and junior brother who, Jin Yi said calmly. He turned around and closed fist saluted. Junior brother Jing, junior brother Qi, junior brother Huang, junior brother Mo, I'll leave this place to you. Senior brother Jin, don't worry. The four elders closed fist saluted back. Chuli took a deep breath and smiled. Elder Jin, please go back first. I've just arrived here and want to stay for a while. All right. Jin Yu was stunned. He stared at Chu Li and slowly nodded. He was shocked and uncertain. With Zhuge Tian's intelligence, he should be able to see through his plan. However, not only did he not go back to stop him, but he stayed here instead. Was he not afraid that he would persuade everyone in Crouching Bull Mountain and prevent him from taking the position? He thought about it and guessed that Chu Li would only stay here for 2 days. Then, he would rush back quickly to fight with him in Crouching Bull Mountain to win over the people's hearts. He decided to speed things up. After returning to the mountain, he would cut the Gordian knot and strive for 2 days to calm the people's hearts. With his prestige, it would not be difficult. He had been guarding the surpassing state. All disciples who wanted to break through came to the surpassing state and receive his guidance and teachings. They were respectful and grateful to him. As long as he gave the order, everyone would listen. Xiao Lian looked at Chu Li anxiously. Chu Li said, as expected of the surpassing state, it's isolated from the world and formed its own world. He realized that the surpassing state was like another world. It was isolated from the original world. He could not even sense Shao, Qi, and the others. It was really strange. He admired the person who built the surpassing state. This was a true divine power. Compared to martial arts, changing the world was a real ability. Jin Yi said faintly, a world of its own. Well said. I'll take my leave. He turned around and left after he finished speaking. All the elders left with him. Chapter 1888. Chu Li calmly said, Elder Xia, don't worry. Xiao Lian turned around and said, Young Lord, they're too much. If they didn't stop us, we might be able to see the Hill Master one last time. Chu Li asked, why did the Hill Master ascend to heaven? The Hill Master is cultivating the last picture of the crouching bull insight. According to the Hill Master, he has already comprehended it completely. As long as he cultivates in isolation, he will be able to cultivate it in one go and achieve perfect mastery. Even if he can't defeat an enlightened master, he will be able to look down on his peers among the grandmasters. Chu frowned. If he has already comprehended it, why? It's not going well when he starts to cultivate it. I thought he would be able to cultivate it in a month, but after 2 months, 3 months, the isolation became longer and longer, and he was unable to extricate himself. Xiao Lian said. Chu sighed. Forget it. There's no point in talking about this now. Xiao Lian said, once the Hill Master leaves, it will be difficult for you, young lord. We shouldn't have agreed to let Elder Jean return. He addressed him as an elder, which meant he was speaking as one of the elders of Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu said, since we can't stop him, we might as well let him go. Tell everyone that I want to talk about martial arts. Yes. Xiao Lian instantly looked excited. The Crouching Bull insight that the young lord was talking about was an eye-opener. It changed his previous way of thinking, and his cultivation speed was surprisingly fast. He had already advanced a level, and at this rate, breaking through to the 8th level of the Crouching Bull insight was just around the corner. There were 22 innate masters in the entire surpassing state. If they could all become grandmasters, then Crouching Bull Mountain strength would truly become a first-rate sect, and not just in name. Let's go see the Hill Master first, Chu said. The two of them arrived in front of a mountain wall. Xiao Lian opened the mountain door and entered the cave. Inside was a spacious and bright stone room. It did not have the dark and damp feeling of a cave. Instead, it felt enlightened and peaceful. It was obviously not an ordinary cave. Zhuge Feng sat on the stone bed in the middle of the cave. His lifelike face revealed a smile. When Chu saw the smile, he frowned and looked at Xiao Lian. Xiao Lian was also puzzled. Initially, he thought that Zhuge Feng's face would be hideous. He would be in unbearable pain, and he would die from qi deviation. He never thought that he would end up like this. It was as if he had seen through everything and obtained a great release. He was like a senior monk of Buddhism who was enlightened and became Buddha. He walked away happily and carefreely. Mountain Chieftain, this is... He furrowed his brows and said, looks like it really wasn't Elder Jin's doing. Chu nodded. He could see that Zhuge Feng's smile came from the depths of his heart. It was obvious that he had understood something and was extremely happy. But why did he leave so suddenly? After circling around Zhuge Feng's bed twice, his gaze landed on the fist mark on Zhuge Feng's knee. He stared at the fist mark thoughtfully. Xiao Lian looked at the fist mark in confusion. This is the Mountain Chieftain's, right? Chu nodded and slowly closed his eyes. As he stared at the fist mark, the omniscient mirror and the heavenly star insight technique were activated in his mind, replaying the situation at that time. The movements and expressions of Zhuge Feng, who was lying on the bed, flashed at the same time to verify the fist mark. Deducing from his expressions and movements, coupled with the fist mark as evidence, it was more beneficial to deducing what he was thinking. After a while, he opened his eyes. The omniscient mirror in his mind flashed Zhuge Feng's expression, happy and excited. He finally solved this big secret and could not wait to go to the Outland to find his master to verify his guess. Chu looked at Xiao Lian thoughtfully. Did the Honorable Master also go to the Outland? Xiao Lian was startled and shook his head. I really don't know. I'm afraid he didn't. He and Zhuge Feng did not have the same master. Zhuge Feng's master was his master senior. When a master senior was still alive, it was not easy to go to the Outland. It required sufficient cultivation and inheritance. Although the inheritance of the Crouching Bull Mountain was long, it was not the best, so it was very difficult to go to the Outland. If a master went to the Outland, the entire Crouching Bull Mountain would know. It should not be kept a secret. Chu frowned and said, the Honorable Master must have gone to the Outland. Oh, Xiao Lian was surprised. Chu completely understood. He shook his head and laughed. The Honorable Master hid it from everyone and secretly went to the Outland. The Hill Master suddenly knew about this secret, so he could not wait to go and see. The hill master is really... Xiao Lian shook his head and smiled bitterly. Just because of this, he suddenly passed away and pushed the young lord to the edge of the cliff. He really did not know what to say. Chuli said, "The hill master is tired of worldly things. Seeing that the crouching bull mountain is so prosperous, he has nothing to worry about. So he left and left the rest to us." "That's the only way," Xiao Lian said. "But the young lord must not be careless. Masters Junior Jean and the others are very difficult to deal with." Chuli smiled. "Elder Xia, you can go first. I will stay here to accompany the hill master." "All right." Xiao Lian looked at Zhuge Feng's body and closed fist saluted before leaving. Chuli stretched out his hand and gently pressed on the fist mark. He smiled. 3 days later, Chuli left the surpassing state. In these 3 days, he completely understood the surpassing state and the temperament of the 4 elders. The 4 of them listened to Jin Yi. They would support whoever Jin Yi supported as the hill master. They would not go against Jin Yi. This was because Jin Yi had done them a great favor, and also because they did not have a good impression of Zhuge Tian. His previous evil deeds made them feel that even if he turned over a new leaf, he had done evil things and could not be tolerated. Chuli did not change. He only taught the 22 innate masters martial arts and explained the crouching bull insight in detail. He explained it in more detail than when he was at the crouching bull mountain. The 22 innate masters learned a lot and showed signs of breaking through. Xiao Lian was full of praise as he listened. In terms of the depth of martial arts, the young lord was rare in the world. He was so young, but had such a deep knowledge of martial arts. It could only be concluded that he was a genius. On the evening of the 4th day, the 2 of them returned to the crouching bull mountain. As soon as he returned to his courtyard, Xiao San quickly welcomed him with an anxious expression. "Young lord, you're finally back." Chuli came to the stone table in the pagoda and sat down. He looked relaxed. "What happened?" Xiao San quickly served him tea and said anxiously, "Young lord, if you didn't come back, everyone would have been dragged away by Elder Jean and the others. I heard that the hill master has ascended to heaven." Chuli nodded and took a sip of tea. Everyone listens to them. Who hasn't been taught by Elder Jean? How can we not? "Young lord, why aren't you anxious at all?" Xiao San shook his head. "What's the use of being anxious? They can't wait for the new hill master to take the position, right?" Chuli leisurely sipped his tea. "Yes. Young lord, if you came back 2 days later, everything would be too late. They're going to choose the new hill master tomorrow. Although your name is on the list, if you're not here, it's still not enough." Xiao San nodded. Chuli said, let's see what everyone thinks." "Young lord, you can't." Xiao San was shocked. Chuli smiled. "Why not?" Chapter 1889. Chuli shook his head. "He can't be the hill master. My young lord, he can't do anything when the hill master is around. But now that the hill master is gone, Elder Jean has become everyone's leader. Everyone follows his lead, and no one will go against his wishes. Even when the hill master announced that young lord would be the next hill master, no one will go against Elder Jin's wishes." Xiao San said anxiously. Chuli smiled. "Who do you think is more prestigious, the hill master or Elder Jin?" "Well, of course it's the hill master." Xiao San hesitated for a moment before answering slowly. Chuli glared at him. Xiao San quickly smiled. "It's hard to say. It's usually the hill master, but once the hill master dies, the hill master's words may not be able to stop Elder Jin's words. Young lord, you can't let Elder Jin do as he pleases." Chuli said, all right then. Go and tell everyone that I'll be lecturing at the martial arts hall tonight." "Okay." Xiao San nodded excitedly. No matter what, he had to let everyone know that the young lord was back first. Moreover, the young lord's lecture had benefited everyone greatly. Everyone was in awe of him and said that the young lord had pulled them back from the wrong path. It was really amazing. He was indeed the young lord, a genius. As long as the young lord spoke nicely, everyone's hearts might change. In the martial arts world, martial prowess reigned supreme. Martial prowess was the most crucial factor. If there was a mountain chieftain with amazing martial prowess, everyone would be at ease. If the mountain chieftain's martial prowess was not up to par, everyone would not be so confident. The young lord had once crippled Lu Tianji's martial arts. This was his biggest advantage. Moreover, the hill master had personally announced him as the next hill master. He excitedly ran out to inform everyone. The sun was setting and twilight was rising. After dinner, everyone came to the martial arts hall in twos and threes. The martial arts hall was brightly lit as if it was daytime. The high platform was empty. Everyone was slightly disappointed. They still had a lot of questions to ask the young lord. However, the young lord was always in a hurry, as if he was very busy and had no time to answer everyone's questions. Jin Yi, Hu Huarong, and Lu Tianji soon appeared below the platform. Behind them were Xiao Lian, Murong Chun, and 4 other elders. Xiao Lian's expression was as gloomy as dripping water. Murong Chun, on the other hand, looked calm as he scanned his surroundings from time to time. When he saw Murong Liang in the crowd, he shook his head. Murong Liang nodded. Murong Chun knew that Murong Liang stood no chance at all. Murong Liang was much more mature now, so he agreed to stop dreaming. Seeing Lu Tianji, everyone discussed in low voices. Whether or not Lu Tianji could become the mountain master had always been a topic of debate. Some people felt that there was no problem. Although their martial arts skills were inferior to the young lords, they still had Elder Jin's guarantee. They could not trust Lu Tianji, but they could trust Elder Jin. Some people felt that it was inappropriate. The young lord was the next hill master, and the young lord's martial arts skills were stronger. Jin Yi and Hu Huarong stood together while Lu Tianji stood behind them. Hu Huarong stroked his silver beard and frowned. What the hell is he doing? We have to be on guard. Jin Yi nodded. Lu Tianji, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He no longer desired the position of hill master. His martial arts skills were not as good as Zhuge Tian's. Even if he became the hill master, he would not have enough confidence and would inevitably feel guilty. He might as well just give it to Zhuge Tian. Unfortunately, he could not say this out loud and could only keep it to himself. Hu Huarong said, "No matter how much he tosses and turns, this is the general trend. He can't do anything about it." Jin Yi stroked his beard and sighed, remaining silent. The surroundings suddenly became quiet. Everyone raised their heads. Chu Li had already appeared on the high platform. Chu Li's gaze swept across the crowd like lightning. He said slowly, "Seeing that everyone has made great progress, I feel very gratified. At least my efforts were not in vain. I did not take out my trump cards and share them with everyone." Everyone closed fists saluted. They had a deep understanding of martial arts. What Chu Li imparted was indeed his experience and secret understanding. Ordinary people would never say this out loud. Chu Li said, "I'm not here today to talk about martial arts. I'm here to tell everyone about the hill master." The crowd was in an uproar. Chu Li continued, "The hill master has already ascended from the victory boundary. I saw it with my own eyes. I've also seen the hill master's body." He left with a smile on his face. "I'm sure he can't wait to go to the Outland to enjoy his life." Everyone smiled. Chu Li said, "Before the hill master passed away, he left this for me." As he spoke, he took out a black ring. Under the light, it glowed with a black luster as if it was carved from black jade. In fact, it was made of a strange material. No one could tell what it was. The hill master's ring. Everyone was shocked. Chu Li wore the ring on his left index finger. It fit perfectly. He showed it in front of everyone and smiled. "What do you think?" "Wait," Hu Huarong shouted. Chu Li put down his left hand and said slowly, "Elder Hu, what can I do for you? How did you get this hill master's ring?" Hu Huarong scoffed. Chu Li smiled faintly. "Elder Hu, do you think that I stole this ring?" That's hard to say," Hu Huarong said. Chu Li shook his head. "Then when did I steal it?" Hu Huarong frowned. Maybe it was during the hill master's isolated cultivation. The hill master did not wear this. Chu Li laughed. "The hill master carries the ring with him at all times. How could he not bring this?" The hill master said that he did not bring it. Hu Huarong said in a low voice. Before the hill master entered the isolated cultivation, he told them that if anything happened to him, The Hill Master's ring was hidden at the foot of his bed in his bedroom. They could retrieve it and give it to the young lord. They rushed back and found the ring, but it was fake. They did not expect it to fall into Zhuge Tian's hands. They understood that they were fooled by the Hill Master. The Hill Master did not trust them at all. They wanted to go back, but Zhuge Tian had already returned. Chu smiled and shook his head. Why did the Hill Master lie to Elder Hu and Elder Jean? It's obvious that the Hill Master is wise and powerful. He had already predicted what the two elders would do. The Hill Master was right. He shouted at the crowd. I was personally announced by the Hill Master to be the next Hill Master. Are Elder Jean and Elder Hu going against the Hill Master's orders? As he spoke, he raised his left hand again. The Hill Master's ring shone with a black light under the light. He stared at the two with bright eyes. Jean Yi said in a low voice, Young Lord, you can ascend to the Hill Master's position. You just have to defeat me. Chu laughed out loud. Jean Yi's expression did not change as he looked at him. Young Lord, you're a genius. If you can't defeat me with your martial arts, forgive me for not obeying you. I'm willing to retire into the forest. He had been in charge of the surpassing state for almost 100 years. His roots were deep, and his mastery of the surpassing state was unparalleled. If he left the surpassing state, Crouching Bull Mountain would no longer have a formation master. It would greatly affect the safety of the surpassing state. Chu chuckled. Since Elder Jean has the intention to retire, I won't force you. Elder Jean has worked hard for Crouching Bull Mountain for so long. It's time for you to rest. I'd like to experience Elder Jin's skills. He waved his hand to signal Jean Yi to go up the stage. Hu Huarong stared at him angrily. This young man was so rude. Jean Yi waved his hand and suddenly appeared on the stage. He threw a punch at Chu Li. Chu Li threw a punch too. Bang! The two ordinary fists collided. It was like a muffled thunder. Jean Yi flew backward. His body was lifted off the ground like a rag doll. He had completely lost control. Chu Li calmly looked at Jean Yi, who staggered and almost fell, but Hu Huarong held him up. He said lightly, Is there anyone else who objects to my ascension? Everyone was silent. They did not expect the young lord's martial arts to be so strong that Elder Jean could not even take one hit. Chu Li was about to speak when he frowned and looked up at the sky. Two streams of light streaked across the sky and fell straight down. Chapter 1890. Chu Li shook his head. Nothing good would happen when a celestial appeared. The two celestial were elders with snow-white eyebrows. They stood in front of Chu Li and looked at him with bright eyes. They shook their heads. Chu Li knew something was wrong when he saw their expressions. Seniors, what brings you here today? Chu Li fist saluted and said, This is the martial arts field of Crouching Bull Mountain. Are you in the wrong place? I'm Niu Qianjin, a disciple of Crouching Bull Mountain 200 years ago. A burly elder scoffed. The other skinny elder said, I'm Yang Ziqing, also a disciple of Crouching Bull Mountain. Chu Li nodded. Seniors, I'm Zhuge Tian, the new Hill Master of Crouching Bull Mountain. You're the Hill Master? Niu Qianjin scoffed. I'm not the Hill Master yet, am I? Chu Li raised his left hand and extended his index finger. The previous Hill Master passed away and passed the position to me. This is the Hill Master's ring. I'm sure both of you know the rules of Crouching Bull Mountain. Of course, I understand the rules. Niu Qianjin nodded. The rule of Crouching Bull Mountain is that anyone who wishes to ascend to the position of Hill Master must accept all challenges from the disciples of Crouching Bull Mountain. Only by winning all the challenges can one ascend to the position. Those who fail to win all the challenges are not qualified to succeed as Hill Master. Chu Li said, Seems like both of you want to learn from each other. That's right. Niu Qianjin scoffed. Chu Li extended his hand. Please. He did not want to waste any more time. Since they wanted to stop him from succeeding, he would just send them to heaven. There was no point in talking to these celestial beings. Niu Qianjin's body suddenly lit up. He broke the seal and used his secret skill. He knew that Zhuge Tian was a genius. He did not want to fail miserably, so he gave it his all. Chu Li's sword flashed and pierced Niu Qianjin's heart. He pulled out his sword and retreated. He looked at Yang Ziqing. Niu Qinjin held his chest and staggered. He smiled bitterly. You live up to your reputation. Yang Ziqing retreated and wanted to avoid Chu Li's sword. Chu Li stepped in front of him. The sword flashed and pierced through his heart. Yang Ziqing looked down his chest and shook his head helplessly and looked at Niu Qinjin. Their bodies suddenly shone brightly, and they transformed into two beams of light that shot into the sky. The gate of heaven slowly appeared in the clouds. When the two beams of light rushed to the gate of heaven, a gap had already been opened. The two of them didn't look back as they directly entered and disappeared. Chu Li sheathed his sword and glanced at the crowd below the stage. Everyone stared at the sky with their mouths agape. They watched as the divine gate slowly disappeared into the clouds, then turned to look at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled calmly. Is there any other disciple who wants to give it a try? Young lord, aren't you being too ruthless? Hu Huarong scoffed. After all, he's a senior of our sect. They're celestials. Chu Li said coldly. I want to issue the first hill master's order. All disciples of Crouching Bull Mountain are not allowed to get close to celestials. Young master, Hu Huarong frowned. Chu Li calmly said, Hill master. This. Hu Huarong hesitated. Chu Li said, Does Elder Hu also want to challenge me to a duel? Hu Huarong met Chu Li's calm gaze, and his expression changed slightly. Jin Yi sighed to himself. He knew that no one could stop Chu Li from killing celestials. Not only did these two celestials not stop him from becoming the Hill Master, but they even helped him. It was really frustrating. He took a deep breath and said slowly, Junior brother Hu, the young lord's martial arts is unparalleled. He's indeed worthy of being the Hill Master. Senior brother Jin, Hu Huarong quickly said. Jin Yi said, Greetings, Hill Master. He knew that with Zhuge Tian's ruthlessness, if they continued to go against him, Zhuge Tian could really use this as an excuse to duel and take the opportunity to kill or cripple them. Now that things had come to this, they could only go with the flow. Hu Huarong opened his mouth, but could not say anything. Chu Li smiled. Elder Xia, Elder Morong, I'll leave the enthronement ceremony to you, too. Yes. Xia Lian and Murong Chun closed fists saluted. Chu Li nodded. It's decided then. Let's start talking about the Crouching Bull Insight. The crowd had yet to react, but when they heard the words Crouching Bull Insight, they could not help but feel refreshed. Chu Li continued to talk about the second picture of the Crouching Bull Insight. The crowd's attention was quickly attracted. They stared at him without blinking and pricked up their ears, afraid to miss a word. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the Divine Light Basilica. There was no one else in the basilica. Sun Mingwei was reading the dossier behind the table. Li Meng stood beside her, watching how Master would handle the dossier. Sun Mingwei looked up. She was dressed in a snow-white robe, and her face was covered with a white veil, revealing only a pair of bright eyes. She looked at him with a faint smile. Chu Li smiled. Li Meng closed fist saluted. Masters Junior. Chu Li nodded. I'm here for Li Meng. Sun Mingwei glanced at Li Meng. Li Meng looked at Chu Li in shock. Masters Junior is looking for me? Chu Li said, The blood dragon fruit is ripe. You can try it. Hurry up and thank Masters Junior Chu, Sun Mingwei said. Li Meng quickly thanked him, but her big eyes flashed with confusion. She did not understand. Chu Li did not say much. I'll bring her back first. It's good to let her stay for a few more days, Sun Mingwei said. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Li Meng said, Master, I'm going to Masters Junior. What about the matter here? Someone will handle it. Sun Mingwei waved her hand. Go. Yes. Li Meng looked reluctant. Sun Mingwei glanced at her. Chu Li smiled and grabbed Li Meng's wrist. He disappeared in a flash and appeared on his own island in the next moment. As soon as he let go of Li Meng's wrist, Li Meng rushed to Xue Ling happily. Sister, Xue Ling. Xue Ling, who was welcoming them, smiled and hugged Li Meng. Chu Li said, Has Shiji arrived? Yes, he just arrived, Xue Ling said. As soon as she finished speaking, Pang Shiji's figure appeared. He strode forward and closed fist saluted. Master, Chu Li waved his hand. Pang Shiji's aura was vigorous and steady. He had improved a lot. After cultivating his swordsmanship, Not only did he not become sharp, but he became more steady. He had mastered the swordsmanship, and his comprehension was not too bad. Chu was secretly glad. Ling said, "Madam and Second Lady are here too." "Let's go and have a look," Chu said. Ling turned around and took out a big wooden box that was about half the height of a person. Li Ming quickly went forward to help. Pang Shiji wanted to go forward too, but he almost touched Li Ming's hand. Li Ming rolled her eyes at him. Pang Shiji awkwardly took a step back and made way. Chu shook his head. It seemed that the two of them did not get along. There would be trouble in the future. They arrived in front of a dragon blood tree. Co Chi and Co Shi were already in front of the dragon blood tree. They were looking at the blood-red fruits hanging on the branches. Each fruit was the size of an apple and was as red as blood. There were faint flashes of scales on them. It did not look like they were going to be eaten. Instead, they would feel nauseous and want to stay away. Chu pointed at the tree. "Shiji, Li Ming, pick one each and eat." "We're eating this?" Li Ming suddenly looked troubled. Pang Shiji went forward without hesitation. He picked a fruit and took a bite. His mouth was dry and unpalatable. His expression changed, but he insisted on eating. He felt bitter. Seeing him like this, Li Ming picked one as well. After biting it, her face immediately scrunched up. Chu said, "Eat it quickly. Don't delay." "Masters Junior, what is this?" Li Ming asked softly. Chu scoffed. "Little? Gather? Why?" Chapter 1891. "Okay," Li Ming answered helplessly. Her face scrunched up, and she swallowed with difficulty. She looked at the fruit with scales on it and felt nauseous. However, the bitterness of the fruit stopped her from vomiting. She could not vomit even if she wanted to. Chu said, "Finish it in 10 breaths." Li Ming stared at him. Chu stared back. Li Ming bit down helplessly. She closed her eyes and chewed hard. She swallowed hard and then bit hard again. After a while, her mouth was numb and it was not that painful to eat. Pang Shiji had finished eating and looked at Li Ming. Li Ming opened her eyes and met his half-smile. She was annoyed and glared back at him. She lowered her head and continued eating. Chu scoffed. "It's almost 10 breaths." Li Ming quickly gobbled it up. Co Chi and Co Shi shook their heads and laughed. They could not bear it, but did not expose Chu. They just looked at Li Ming chewing pitifully. Her mouth was small, far smaller than Pang Shiji's. Pang Shiji's mouth was equivalent to 3 of hers. Seeing Li Ming being forced into such a miserable state, he pitied her. He looked at Chu but saw Chu's serious expression. He lost his courage and could only sigh for Li Ming. Chu saw that Li Ming had finally finished eating. She even chewed up a piece of the core and swallowed it. He smiled. "This is a miracle fruit. The longer you eat it, the more the medicinal effect will disappear. Eat this." As he spoke, he took out 2 pills and tossed them to the 2 of them, 1 for each of them. These pills were as white as jade, but had no smell. They were sealed with beeswax. Li Ming looked at them and then looked up at Chu. Chu said, "Eat it first." Li Ming said helplessly, "Masters Junior, what is it? You should at least tell me." "You don't need to know," Chu said. Li Ming looked unhappy. Chu said, "You don't want to eat it? All right." Li Ming sighed helplessly. She could not win against him. It was better to be obedient. Pang Shiji crushed the beeswax and swallowed it. His face turned red. Li Ming stared at him. Compared to this guy, she was the one who was not obedient, and he was the obedient child. One annoying guy. She also crushed the wax and swallowed the pill. As soon as it entered his mouth, it transformed into a stream of clear qi that drilled into his internal organs and began to flow throughout his body. An ice-cold aura rose from his stomach and collided with the clear aura. Immediately, the 2 forces began to fight, neither giving way to the other. His body became their battlefield, and for a moment, the pain was unbearable. Pang Shiji's face was red from the pain. In just a moment, his forehead was already covered in a layer of sweat. Li Ming's small face was pale. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. "Are you all right?" Xiao Qi asked softly. Chu shook his head. "Use your sword to attack them." "Huh?" Co Chi looked at him in surprise. Xiaoshi said. Judging from their looks, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't matter if it's too late, but Li Ming is sect leader Sun's precious disciple. If something really happens to her, how are you going to explain it to him? Chu Li smiled. It's all right. Xiaoshi cast a sidelong glance at him. Looks like your relationship with sect leader Sun is not ordinary. Chu Li looked at her helplessly. Xiaoshi pursed her lips and chuckled. I'm not trying to stir up trouble. Second elder sister, you are stirring up trouble. Xiaoqi laughed. Xiaoshi laughed. Chu Li is not being honest. Second, elder sister, Xiaoqi scoffed. Xiaoshi quickly waved her hand. All right, I won't stir up trouble. Quickly follow your husband's orders. Xiaoqi rolled her eyes at her. The regal sword above her head was already activated. Suddenly, streaks of sword energy shot toward the two of them. Bang! Pang Shiji was sent flying, with Li Ming beside him. Chu Li shook his head and said, Don't be merciful. I'm still here. I'm only left with one breath. I won't die. Xiaoshi laughed. You're really heartless as a master. They don't advance bravely. They need to be forced to move forward, Chu Li said. Li Ming did not know martial arts since she was young. She was just a daughter of an ordinary family. Later on, she suddenly became Sun Mingyue's disciple. She did not understand how rare it was and how hard she should work. Everything was shouldered by Sun Mingyue. Under Sun Mingyue's protection, although Li Ming worked hard, she did not feel the pressure of treading on thin ice. Pang Shiji, on the other hand, had lived a life of luxury since he was young. His grandfather was an elder of the Great One Palace. He had a respected status, and no one dared to laugh at his low martial arts. Later on, he had a fortuitous encounter and ate the strange fruit. Since then, he became a genius. Even though he wanted to be the best in the world, he did not feel the urgency to do so. He felt that if he cultivated step by step, he would become the best sooner or later. They lacked a sense of urgency, so they did not work hard enough when they cultivated. If they wanted to improve their strength quickly, they could only passively force them to improve. Bang! Bang! Pang Shiji and Li Ming were hit by the sword again in the air. They spat out blood. Chu Li said in a low voice, If you can't withstand this, you're useless. You'll only be a burden if I keep you around. Pang Shiji and Li Ming widened their eyes and took a deep breath to stabilize their inner energy. They wanted to avoid the invisible sword energy. Bang, bang. Just as they were about to fall, they flew up again and spat out blood in the air. Xiaoqi looked calm. She had used 20% of her regal sword aura. Their cultivation level was not strong enough, so they needed to be forced to improve. Otherwise, if they were bullied outside, they could not let their elders stand up for them. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the continuous sounds, the two flew back and forth in the air. They tried their best to avoid the invisible sword energy, but they could feel it coming. However, it was too fast for them to avoid, so they could only fight it head-on. Li Ming used the Divine Light Fist, while Pang Shiji used the Cloud, slashing God's palm. The result of their head-on fight was that they were constantly sent flying. They were injured again and again. They felt as if their internal organs were about to be overturned. The pain was unbearable. Chu Li said faintly, With your current martial arts level, you won't dare to go out. You'll be embarrassed if you do. Li Ming, don't think that you'll be fine if you hide in Great Light Peak. Those elders of the Divine Light Fist don't even look at people with weak martial arts. You're the disciple of the bishop, so they'll look down on you even more if you're not good enough. Li Ming pursed her red lips. Her eyes were bright. Chu Li had hit her sore spot. Those elders did not even look her in the eye, and their tone was filled with disdain. It was said that when her master was younger than her, she was already a saint. These old people did not dare to be presumptuous. Even if they were to do something, they would do it behind her back. They would not dare to do it in front of her. However, she was looked down upon by them. Since she was not good enough, her master could not say anything. She cultivated with all her might. Unfortunately, martial arts was not something that could be achieved overnight. It was impossible to improve in a short period of time. Chu Li continued, Pang Shiji, as my disciple, I'm afraid you won't dare to go out. My enemies are everywhere. Any one of them can kill you hundreds of times. Do you want to hide by my side for the rest of your life? Pang Shiji's handsome face turned red. He said firmly, I won't embarrass you, master. Chu Li said, I'm just saying, you're not working hard enough when it comes to cultivation. Yes. Pang Shiji gritted his teeth. Chapter 1892. Pang Shiji and Li Ming kept vomiting blood. Their faces were pale, but their aura was rising rapidly. Their punches and palms became more powerful, but unfortunately, it was not enough against the regal sword energy. They were still being sent flying, and they were constantly being injured. After more than 100 strikes, they were exhausted and their bodies were in pain. Their joints felt like they were dislocated, and they could not muster up any strength. Every punch and palm was forced out with all their might. Xiaoqi did not plan to stop at all. The regal sword energy had reached 40% completion. Moreover, the regal sword energy was getting denser. Before their fists and palms could attack, the sword energy had already reached them. They continued to spin around in the air. The regal sword's energy did not come from a single direction, but from all directions. They were sent flying back and forth like sandbags as they continued to hover above Chu Li and the others without falling to the ground. There were puddles of blood on the ground. Xiao Shi's heart tightened as she was afraid that something bad would happen to them. Pang Shiji and Li Ming had no other thoughts. The regal sword energy was the only thing on their minds. They tried their best to block it. Unfortunately, the regal sword energy was pure and powerful. Their fists and palms could not stop it at all. They were hit again and again. They were injured and in pain. Their hearts tightened, and they felt hopeless. Chu Li's voice was heard again. This time, it's the madam's attack. The next time, it'll be your enemy. It's useless even if you kneel and beg for mercy. You can only rely on yourself. You'll die if you give up, but you'll still have a chance to live if you don't. The two gritted their teeth and used all their strength. They were really fighting with their lives on the line. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. Under such circumstances, the blood dragon fruit and sky soaring pill's energy could be fully unleashed without being wasted. Bang bang. Pang Shiji and Li Ming fell to the ground. They were limp and motionless. Their faces were as pale as a sheet. They could not even move a finger. They had completely used up all their strength. The front of their clothes were dyed red with blood. When they fell to the ground, they were covered in mud. They were in a sorry state. Chu Li activated the life and death scripture. Suddenly, a mighty spiritual energy surged and engulfed them. As they bathed in the spiritual energy, their injuries healed faster. Chu Li lightly slapped his palm on top of their heads. The Earth Matrix and Reincarnation Scripture reversed Yin and Yang, combining with the life and death scripture's spiritual energy, multiplying its effects. The two of them felt that their injuries were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, their bodies were as good as new, as if they were not injured, or even better. Pang Shiji lightly kicked his feet and immediately soared into the air. He hurriedly used his internal energy to land on the ground, but with a pung sound, he sank into the soil up to his feet. He widened his eyes in disbelief as he looked at Chu Li and then at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi smiled. Did your skills improve? Mistress, I don't think it's me anymore. Pang Shiji was overjoyed. Li Ming was in a daze. She sensed her own body and could already feel the surging inner energy. In the past, her inner energy was like a small stream, but now it was like a river. The difference was dozens of times. She could not imagine that she could possess such a deep inner energy. Chu Li flicked his finger, and with a pop sound, Li Ming woke up. Li Ming looked at him nervously and blankly. Don't worry, it's not a temporary increase, Chu Li said. Li Ming instantly smiled. Masters Jr., is my cultivation really that powerful? You have to continue cultivating when you go back. Don't slack off, Chu Li said. Li Ming looked at the blood dragon tree. You can only eat one at a time, Chu Li said. You'll die if you eat too many. Li Ming looked disappointed. Chu Li said, this thing is magical, but at the level of your master and I, it's useless to eat it. If you want to catch up to master, You'll have to rely on your own hard work. You can't count on it. I see. Li Meng nodded helplessly. Chu Li said, it's already saved you more than 10 years of time. Be grateful. Li Meng giggled. Yes, thank you, Masters Jr. Pang Shiji was slightly disappointed. Chu Li gave him a sidelong glance, and he quickly straightened his expression. Chu Li did not blame the two of them. It was just human nature. If he were in their shoes, he would be the same. No one could avoid it. Their reaction was the truest, as they did not hide their thoughts in front of him. Since you're here, stay for 2 days before going back, Chu Li said to Li Meng. Li Meng quickly nodded. Yes, although the Great Light Peak was good, it was not as leisurely as this. She did not have to fight with those old men all day. Xiao Qi said, Shiji, accompany Miss Li well. Don't neglect her. You young people have something to say. Yes, Master's wife. Pang Shiji nodded solemnly. Li Meng gave Pang Shiji a sidelong glance. Since Chu Li was present, she could not say much, so she just gave Xiao Qi a fist salute. Chu Li, Xiao Qi, Xiao Shi, and Xueling left, leaving only the two of them. Pang Shiji said, Miss Li, where do you want to go? Do you want to take a boat on the lake or go to the gazebo to enjoy the scenery? No need. Li Meng rolled her eyes at him. I'm more familiar with this place than you are. Pang Shiji smiled. Since Master's wife has instructed me, of course, I have to treat you well. You're really a lucky fellow to be apprenticed to Master's Junior Chu. Li Meng pouted. But you're also quite unlucky. How so? Pang Shiji asked with a smile. Everyone else envied him for being apprenticed to his master. A brilliant master could produce a brilliant disciple. He had a bright future ahead of him. Moreover, he had his master as his backing, so he was full of confidence. Li Meng scoffed. Master Junior Chu is not a soft-hearted person. As his disciple, you must be under a lot of pressure. Pang Shiji gestured for her to sit in the gazebo. Li Meng did not object. The two of them sat in the gazebo next to them. Pang Shiji personally poured tea for them. Li Meng said, I've had a taste of Master's Junior Chu's teachings. It's really hard. Master is usually very busy and has no time to teach me. It's always Master's wife who teaches me martial arts. Pang Shiji smiled. So I don't know if Master is strict or not. I see. Li Meng nodded. That's considered lucky. Madam Chu looks cold on the outside, but warm on the inside. She won't be too harsh, unlike Master's Junior Chu. At this point, she hurriedly shut her mouth and looked around. Pang Shiji smiled. Master won't mind. He'll definitely hear it. Forget it. Li Meng said. Pang Shiji asked, what is the relationship between Master and Master? Li Meng gave him a sidelong glance. What do you want to know? I've always been curious. Master is a citizen of the Ji dynasty, while your master is the bishop of the Li dynasty's Holy Church of Light. Their statuses and identities are very different. How could they be friends? It's really strange. You don't know? Li Meng asked with a smile. Pang Shiji shook his head. Li Meng chuckled. It's fine if you don't know. I didn't even tell you about this. This disciple of yours, hee. Pang Shiji smiled. Miss Li, do you know? Of course. Li Meng scoffed. I'm the only one who knows about this secret. No one else knows. Pang Shiji looked envious. Li Meng smiled. There's no harm in telling you. Master's Junior Chu has another identity. Chapter 1893. Li Meng said proudly. You're not allowed to tell anyone else. Of course not. Pang Shiji hurriedly nodded. Li Meng asked, do you know Zhao Dai from the Holy Church of Light? I've heard of it. Pang Shiji hurriedly replied. He's the Holy Church of Light's newest prodigy. In just a few years, he's already ascended to the position of priest. He's an influential figure at the moment. How could he? Could he be master? That's right. Li Meng smiled and said, now you won't be surprised by the friendship between my master and martial Uncle Chu, right? Zhao Dai is actually my master. Pang Shiji sighed with emotion. Although Zhao Dai was also a new genius, no one would have thought that he was actually Master Chu Li. Your master didn't recognize him? Pang Shiji asked. At that time, Master's Junior Chu was up to no good. He wanted to teach the Holy Church of Light a lesson on behalf of the Ji dynasty. After that, Master and Master's Junior Chu got to know each other through a fight, and their friendship slowly deepened. That's how things turned out, Li Meng said. Pang Shiji exclaimed in admiration. To be able to conceal your identity and ascend to such a high position, Master is indeed amazing. Li Meng said, You don't have Martial Uncle Chu's ability. Pang Shiji shook his head. Initially, he thought highly of himself, but after learning martial arts from Xiao Qi, he realized that his talent was far inferior to his master's. His master was able to understand the sword technique on his own in a short period of time, but he could not understand it for a long time under the guidance of his master's wife. The key was not the talent of the body, but the power of comprehension. The difference between them was like heaven and earth. Fortunately, he had a great master, and his comprehension was almost as high as his. As long as he trained hard, he would one day reach a level rarely seen in the world. Li Meng snorted, You look stupid, but you're not as strong as Martial Uncle Chu. She stood in front of Chu Li like a child meeting an adult. Master's Junior Chu Li was only a few years older than her, but he gave her a lot of pressure. However, it was different in front of Pang Shiji. Pang Shiji was tall and strong, even taller than Chu Li, but he did not give her any sense of pressure at all. Pang Shiji scratched the back of his head and said helplessly, I'm far behind Master. Master entered the public house as a scribe and climbed up the ranks step by step. He earned everything by himself, but I'm different. What did you just eat? Li Meng asked. I think it's called the blood dragon fruit, Pang Shiji said. It's a spirit tree that Master meticulously cultivated. It's very precious. Blood dragon fruit. Li Meng tilted her head and thought about it. She had never seen this name in the ancient books of the Holy Church of Light. She asked in a daze, What effects does it have? Increase my power. It seems to strengthen the body, wash the marrow, and then increase the power, Pang Shiji said. Li Meng said, I don't feel like I've been reborn either. Pang Shiji said, That must be because you've already shaved your hair and cleansed your marrow, so you can't feel it. Li Meng nodded slowly. She recalled the time when Chu Li threw her into the ice pond. After she came out of the ice pond, her body had undergone an earth-shattering change. It seemed that after experiencing it once, eating the fruit again would not have such an effect. Chu Li, Xiao Shi, and Xiao Qi sat in their own courtyard. Xueling served them tea and left. This young Li Meng is very beautiful. Xiao Shi giggled. Chu Li, what are you planning? Chu Li shook his head. Xiao Qi said, I think Shiji has fallen for her. Chu Li waved his hand and said, Don't get involved in this matter. Li Meng is the next saint, so you can't get involved in a romantic relationship. If Shiji falls in love with her, he'll only suffer. He regretted allowing the two to meet. Pang Shiji looked smart, but he was simple and honest, so his reflexes were not sharp enough. On the other hand, Li Meng looked delicate and innocent, but she was extremely intelligent. When the two of them were together, Li Meng would feel that Pang Shiji was slow and clumsy, so she would be anxious when she was with him. As Sun Mingyue's disciple, Li Meng knew that there were many young talents in the Holy Church of Light. He knew that Li Meng would have very high standards, so it would be difficult for her to fall for Pang Shiji. Pang Shiji was handsome and had a master, but he was useless in Li Meng's eyes. If Pang Shiji fell for her, he would inevitably be tortured and ask for trouble. No matter how clever Chu Li was and how powerful the Heavenly Star insight skill was, he never expected that Pang Shiji would fall in love with Li Meng at first sight. Xiao Shi chuckled. So what if she's a saint? She just can't get married. Xiao Qi said, A saint is human too. She has feelings too. The entire Holy Church of Light is on our shoulders, and we're always scheming against each other. We don't have time to care about feelings. Chu Li shook his head. Forget it. Both of them will suffer. Shiji doesn't need to suffer. Xiao Qi nodded. Let nature take its course. Chu Li looked at Xiao Shi. Second eldest sister, don't add fuel to the fire. Understood. Xiao Shi rolled her eyes at him. Xiao Qi asked, Now that the blood dragon fruit has ripened, are you going to increase the strength of Crouching Bull Mountain? Chu Li nodded. It's time. He was eager to condense the Chakram Pagoda and obtain the second half of the Heavenly Star Jade record as soon as possible. He had a sense of crisis, as if a great disaster was about to happen. He could not explain this feeling, but he believed it. He did not know how to avoid it, but he knew that he had to increase his strength as soon as possible. Not only did he have to increase his strength, but he also had to increase his forces. Xiao Qi said, "Be careful not to spread this, or else Crouching Bull Mountain will not be safe." Chu Li nodded. People were not greedy enough, and Crouching Bull Mountain's current reputation and strength were not enough to deter the heroes. Once the news that there was a mutant fruit that could increase one's strength was spread, they would soon be attacked by others, and there would be a bloodbath. Crouching Bull Mountain, surpassing Boundary Chu, Li sat on a high platform halfway up the valley and looked at the 60 grandmasters below. This high platform was located next to a cave halfway up the mountain wall. It was only 2 meters square and stood out abruptly. One could not help but admire the wonderful workmanship of nature. To be able to form such a platform on a straight cliff, one could not help but admire the ingenuity of nature. "Hill Master, why did you summon us here?" Xiao Lian fist saluted. The 60 grandmasters stood below the platform and looked up at Chu Li about 50 meters away. The Hill Master's enthronement ceremony had ended, and as soon as it ended, the Hill Master issued an order for all grandmasters in Crouching Bull Mountain to return to the surpassing boundary. Crouching Bull Mountain was now empty, and this worried Xiao Lian, Murong Chun, and the other elders. If Skyward Palace found out about this and took the opportunity to attack, Crouching Bull Mountain would be finished. Chu Li said calmly, "Xiao San." "Yes, Hill Master." Xiao San appeared from the cave next to him, holding a box in his hand. Chu Li said, "Distribute it." "Yes." Xiao San responded respectfully and glided down the high platform. He opened the box and distributed the fruits to everyone. Chu Li said, "Eat it immediately after you get it. Don't delay." "Hill Master?" Xiao Lian was stunned, and he quickly asked, "What fruit is this?" Chu Li said, "Are you worried that I'll harm you?" "Of course not." Xiao Lian quickly said. Chu Li said, "It's good for you. Just eat it, and the sooner you eat it, the greater the benefit." When Xiao Lian heard this, he immediately took a bite. His expression changed slightly, but he still finished it in one go. Murong Chun was a little hesitant, but when he saw Xiao Lian's reaction, he also ate it fiercely. Chapter 1894. After eating it, Chu Li nodded at Xiao San. Xiao San quickly passed the sky-soaring pills to them and asked them to consume them immediately. Since they had already eaten such a disgusting fruit, it was not a big deal to eat another pill. Hence, they took it, crushed the beeswax, and threw it into their mouths. It turned into a clear stream of air that seeped into their organs. Chu Li suddenly smiled coldly and shouted, "Since you've eaten this, prepare to die." As he finished speaking, he suddenly threw a punch. A huge green bull suddenly appeared in front of everyone and charged into the crowd. Wherever it passed, people were sent flying. No one could withstand a green bull's charge. It was invincible. Chu Li did not stop throwing punch after punch. Every time he threw a punch, a force was infused into the green bull. The green bull did not dissipate and charged forward like a real bull. No one could stop it. Chu Li laughed. "You consumed poison, you'll all die." Xiao Lian was in disbelief, and so was Murong Chun. They felt that Chu Li had suddenly changed into a different person. His expression was cold and cruel, as if he really wanted to eat them. It felt surreal, like it was just a dream. "Hill Master, why?" Xiao Lian blurted out. Chu Li laughed coldly. "I saw you as an eyesore, so I killed all of you. Hill Master, if we die, who else will serve Crouching Bull Mountain?" Murong Chun asked. As soon as he finished speaking, he was sent flying by the green bull again. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Chu Li said, "Don't worry. Even if you die, more masters will appear. Crouching Bull Mountain has no lack of masters." "Hill Master, we're not convinced." Xiao Lian shouted. Chu Li scoffed. "You'll die even if you're not convinced." "Hill Master, let's see how powerful you are." Murong Chun gritted his teeth and shouted. He suddenly turned in the air and rushed towards Chuli, who was on the high platform. Chuli shook his head and laughed. You've overestimated yourself. After he threw another punch, another green bull appeared in the air. It was as huge as an elephant and looked so real that it crashed towards him. Murong Chun flew into the air like a rag doll. His eyes widened in disbelief. He did not expect Chu Li to be able to create two green bulls with such power. Chu Li punched again and formed another green bull. The three green oxen seemed to have come to life as they charged around wildly. In front of them, everyone was as small and helpless as ants. They tried to dodge, but they were unable to. They could only desperately face the attacks. 2 or 3 of them worked together, but it was useless. They were still sent flying by the green ox, and their injuries continued to increase. Chu Li stood on the high platform, punching out again and again. The fist force landed on the green bull's body, maintaining it from dispersing. The crouching bull insight was indeed mysterious. When he first obtained it, he did not pay much attention to it. After all, it was still a level lower than the mystical arts that he had learned. Now that he had returned to Crouching Bull Mountain and studied the Crouching Bull insight, he realized that it was indeed a top-notch magnum opus. With the Heavenly Star Void insight skill, his understanding of the Crouching Bull insight deepened, and its power grew stronger. Although it was not as powerful as the Supreme Vajra Palm, it was enough for him to dominate the world. A quarter of an hour later, the ground was littered with experts. None of them were able to stand upright, all of them lying on the ground. Ah! Xiao Lian looked up to the sky and screamed. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. He suddenly appeared in front of them and said, I was just joking, don't take it seriously. Xiao Lian looked at him in shock. Murong Chun and the others who were lying on the ground also widened their eyes. Chu Li chuckled and said, Let everyone witness the power of the Crouching Bull insight. It'll give them confidence. Hill Master, this joke isn't funny at all. Xiao Lian smiled bitterly. Murong Chun said impatiently, Hill Master, this is too much, isn't it? Chu Li said, If I don't do this, how can I make everyone fight with their lives? Why do you fight with your lives? Xiao Lian asked. Chu Li smiled and said, You'll find out later. His body turned into a phantom and quickly circled around the crowd. He slapped each of them, and after spiritual energy surged into them, their injuries were quickly healed. After a quarter of an hour, everyone got up, their faces filled with disbelief. They noticed that they had been reborn. Their bodies were as light as feathers, and their strength was like that of a bull. They were actually a few times stronger than before. This was something they never expected. When they saw the Hill Master feeding them food and pills, some of them guessed that it might be beneficial, but the benefits were far beyond their imagination. They initially thought that increasing their powers by 50% was already the limit, and that it was almost impossible to double it, but now, it was a few times stronger. Chu Li said calmly, Everyone can feel it, right? Hill Master. Xiao Lian hesitated for a moment. What's going on? It's not an illusion, is it? Chu Li said, These are the rare fruits and spirit pills that I obtained from a fortuitous encounter. I'll let everyone have a fortuitous encounter as well. As for how much their powers will increase, it'll depend on their own talents. How can this be? Xiao Lian said hurriedly. Chu Li smiled and said, Since I'm a Hill Master, I'll naturally think of everyone when there's something good. How can I hog it all for myself? Moreover, my strength alone is far from being as strong as everyone in the Crouching Bull Mountain. Only then, the Crouching Bull Mountain can become one of the 4 major sections. The Hill Master's breadth of mind really leaves people speechless. Murong Chun praised. He knew that if it were him, he would definitely not do such a thing. What kind of breadth of mind did Chu Li have to give such a rare item to others? Even if it was a disciple of the Crouching Bull Mountain, it was not him, nor was it his family. Such breadth of mind might be called stupid, but he could only sigh in admiration. He believed that after this incident, all the disciples of the Crouching Bull Mountain would definitely not have second thoughts, even if they had to go through fire and water. Chu Li said in a low voice, Now that the celestial being has descended, the world is in chaos. It's wishful thinking for the Crouching Bull Mountain to think that it can stay alone. No one can escape from the turbulence. Only by strengthening our own strength can we protect ourselves in this chaotic world. Hill Master, please give us your orders. Duan Tianya said in a low voice. Chuli nodded and said, My orders are for everyone to train hard. The crouching bull mountain must amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Yes, everyone shouted in unison. Chuli saw that everyone was in high spirits and had a good morale, so he nodded in satisfaction. Then everyone should train hard. The Victory region is full of spiritual energy. It's the most suitable place for training. As for what happened today, everyone should know that it can't be spread, or else the crouching bull mountain will be destroyed. Yes, everyone said in a low voice. They were not stupid. They knew the seriousness of this matter. If the secret was leaked, everyone would be in trouble, and the crouching bull mountain would become the target of public criticism. No matter how powerful they could not stop the greedy heroes of the martial arts world. Chuli waved his hand and said, Go. Everyone dispersed, but Xiao Lian and Murong Chun followed. They were extremely curious about what they had eaten. It was a rare fruit that they had never seen before, and their hearts were itching. Chuli immediately interrupted them. You don't have to ask too much. It's best if you don't know. Are we really not allowed to know? Xiao Lian was not satisfied. Chuli shook his head. In the future, those who make great contributions will be rewarded like this. Xiao Lian smiled and said, If that's the case, why should we worry that the crouching bull mountain won't prosper? The hill master was so selfless. Giving such a rare fruit as a reward, the disciples of the crouching bull mountain would definitely work hard. If they worked together, the prosperity of the crouching bull mountain would be just around the corner. Chapter 1895. Chuli asked everyone to cultivate in the divine realm while he returned to the High Duke's public house to prepare for isolated cultivation. He wanted to condense the rotary pagoda as soon as possible so that he could control his life and death. In the early morning, he was watching Li Meng and Pang Shiji spar in the courtyard. He originally planned to separate them and let Pang Shiji return to Goddess Attraction Mountain, while Li Meng stayed for a while to give her some pointers. However, Xiao Shi mocked him for asking which one was his disciple. Xiao Qi was also displeased. Chuli thought about it and decided to let both of them stay. As a master, he could not watch Pang Shiji fall deeper and deeper, so he asked them to spar and spend more time with each other. Love at first sight would often lead to falling deeply in love. If they were to separate suddenly, they would beautify each other even more and fall deeper. He wanted Pang Shiji to see Li Meng's flaws clearly and reduce their feelings. Distance made the heart grow fonder. If he reduced the distance between them, he would realize that the other was not beautiful enough and would not like her as much. This was the only thing he could do now. No matter how strong one's martial arts was, he could not control his disciple's heart. Shiji. Chuli sat beside Xiao Qi and said slowly, You're my disciple, so you represent my reputation. Li Meng is Bishop Sun's disciple, so he represents the Holy Church of Light. You know what to do. Yes, Master. Pang Shiji gritted his teeth and replied. He was prepared to go easy on Li Meng and deliberately let her win, but his master saw through him. In front of his master, his thoughts were as clear as the lines on his palm. His master did not rely on martial arts alone to become the world's #1 master. He also relied on his accurate judgment. Otherwise, he would have been killed by someone more powerful before he could become the world's #1 master. Chuli added, As a man, if your martial arts isn't as good as a woman's, it'll be too unbecoming and people will look down on you. Yes, Pang Shiji said. He was suddenly filled with fighting spirit. Yes, as a man, if he could not defeat a woman, how could he make her fall in love with him? He would only be looked down on. A woman would not fall in love with someone she looked down on. Li Meng, Bishop Sun's teaching standards will depend on your performance. Chuli nodded. Let's begin. Li Meng nodded vigorously. Her big bright eyes stared hard at Pang Shiji. She was full of fighting spirit. She swore to defeat him and win glory for her master. Her master was not as good as martial Uncle Chu, but she wanted to defeat Pang Shiji and win back 10% for her master. Miss Li, please. Pang Shiji shouted. Li Meng snorted. Please. She threw out a light punch, soft as if there were no bones in it. It was as if he did not use any fist force and was only doing it out of courtesy. Pang Shiji was not careless and took a step back to avoid it. Bang! His figure suddenly swayed. His chest had already been punched, and he almost flew out. He staggered a step back, and with a serious expression, he swung his palm to meet the second punch. Bang! Both of them took a step back. Their internal energy was equally matched. Pang Shiji had been cultivating for a longer period of time and had become a grandmaster a long time ago, but his progress in cultivation was slow. Li Meng, on the other hand, had only been cultivating for a short period of time, but she had received Chu Li's guidance. She had been reborn and recited Buddhist scriptures, which had laid a solid foundation. The Great Light Scripture was also a martial art that could be learned quickly, so her inner energy cultivation level was not inferior to Pang Shiji's. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. This Li Meng was indeed a genius, and she was much better than Pang Shiji. Pang Shiji's expression became more serious. He knew about Li Meng. She had only cultivated for a short period of time, but her cultivation level was not inferior to his. If he were to lose, he would be too ashamed to face anyone. His figure suddenly flashed, and he turned into a ghost. His palms were extremely fast, and he struck out with the cloud slashing palm. Bang, 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 bang. Li Meng took on his cloud slashing palm head-on and realized that the cloud slashing palm was strange. The palm force was extremely pure, and it directly penetrated the fist force of the divine light fist. After entering her meridians, it quickly devoured her inner energy to strengthen itself, which hindered the circulation of her heart technique. After a few palm strikes, she felt like she had lost control of her inner energy. Before she could use her ultimate skill, Pang Shiji suddenly sped up and disappeared. Then, she felt a pain in her back, and the scenery in front of her quickly retreated. She was already in the air. She wanted to control her body to land steadily, but she realized that the inner energy in her body had disappeared without a trace. Co Chi's regal sword energy moved, and instantly, she was supported and gently landed on the ground. Thank you, Miss Li. Pang Shiji gave a fist salute. Li Meng pursed her red lips and scoffed. Good palm technique, I'm impressed. Cloud slashing palm. Pang Shiji said. The cloud slashing palm was marvelous, and it was far better than the palm technique that he had learned before. Moreover, its power was astonishing. If it were not for this palm technique and body movement technique, he would definitely not be able to win against Li Meng. Li Meng had not mastered these antique studies because she had only cultivated for a short period of time. Once she had completely mastered cult leader Sun's martial arts, the outcome of the battle would be uncertain. After all, no matter how strong her master was, she had not been able to completely learn it. Li Meng scoffed. Cloud slashing palm. Chu Li said, Li Meng, there's a problem with your divine light fist. There's a problem? Li Meng was shocked. This was personally taught by my master. Chu Li nodded. The divine light fist isn't cultivated like this, so you can't fully unleash its power. As he spoke, the great light scripture circulated in his body, and then he lightly threw a punch. Suddenly, a stream of light flashed, and then, with a muffled bang, a rock on the artificial hill opposite him cracked into several pieces. I performed this punch according to the level of your inner energy, Chu Li said. After you go back, you must find a Buddhist scripture and recite it 100 times every day, without stopping. Yes. Li Meng nodded excitedly. Masters Junior, how did you do it? Chu Li said, your fist force is only your own inner energy. In fact, this punch needs to draw on the power of heaven and earth. If you can't draw on the power of heaven and earth for your use, its power will be slightly weaker. Then why didn't my master say anything? Li Meng tilted her head and asked. Chu Li said, your master was too lazy to tell you, so he wanted you to realize it yourself. I was anxious, so I pointed it out directly. Li Meng slowly nodded and tried to throw a punch, but it was still formless and traceless. It did not have a strange phenomenon that Chu Li had just now. Chu Li shook his head. I still haven't grasped the main point. What is the main point? Li Meng asked. Chu Li smiled. This is what you need to realize on your own. I can only point out this much. You'll have to rely on yourself for the rest. All right. Li Meng blinked his big eyes, thought about it, and threw another punch. Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi looked at him with a faint smile. Chu Li shook his head helplessly. Sun Mingyue's martial arts attainment was profound. After all, the Great Light Peak had a long history of martial arts heritage, and Sun Mingyue was a diligent person, so she must have read all the books in the collection. Therefore, the depth of her martial arts attainment was not something that ordinary people could imagine. However, Sun Mingyue could see through people's hearts but not their bodies. She was not as good at observing martial arts heart techniques as Chu Li was, so she did not notice Li Meng's problem. She only thought that it was because he had not mastered it well enough. In fact, it was not wrong to say that he had not mastered it well enough. As long as he had mastered it well, he would naturally be able to draw on the power of heaven and earth. However, if Chu Li pointed it out in advance, he could avoid many detours and master it faster. Suddenly, Xue Ling fluttered over and handed him a letter. Chu Li glanced at her and took the letter. After quickly reading it, his expression became serious. Xiao Qi asked, "What's wrong?" Chu Li sighed. King Ping has left. Left? Xiao Qi asked, "Where?" Chapter 1896. King Ping has ascended to heaven. Co. Shi frowned. Her beautiful face was solemn. Did someone assassinate King Ping? Chu Li shook his head. There was no assassination this time. King Ping left on his own. Why? Co. Shi asked. Did he have something he couldn't get over? Sigh. Chu Li shook his head. King Ping hasn't been able to resolve the knot in his heart. Since Consort Ping has ascended to heaven, he decided to follow her. He doesn't want to be alone in this world anymore. Consort Ping ascended to heaven? Co. Qi asked. The new Consort Ping? Chu Li nodded. Co. Qi frowned. How did that happen? Chu Li explained. It might be related to the conflict between sections. Either way, Consort Ping is ascending to heaven and King Ping is following her. He gave me this letter before he left to ask me to understand that he can't be the emperor anymore. Sigh. King Ping is such an infatuated man. Co. Shi shook her head. Who would have thought that he would be so affectionate as a general? Chu Li nodded. King Ping was extremely conceited. It was precisely because of this that he was devastated by the death of the previous Consort Ping. Even after he had a new Consort Ping, he still could not recover and always had thoughts of abandoning the world. Now that the new Consort Ping was ascending to heaven, he would leave this world and be completely free. He could understand King Ping's thoughts, but as a crown prince, this was too capricious. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. King Ping trusted him too much. It was because of him that King Ping could leave this world and go to the Outland with peace of mind. He even said that they would meet again in the future, so there was no need for him to say goodbye. Co. Qi frowned. What should we do? King Ping was supposed to inherit the throne. His sudden departure had messed up all his plans. Chu Li's hard work had gone down the drain. Lung Shoren was the happiest person now. Chu Li turned to look at Co. Shi. Second eldest sister, let's go to the Titanium Temple. You want Suin to leave the temple? Co. Shi asked. Chu Li nodded slowly. Co. Shi said, he's a stubborn fellow. It's hard to change his mind once he's set on something. He's not interested in the throne. Why should we force him? If the people don't suffer, let him inherit the throne. I won't be at ease if there's anyone else, Chu Li said. All right, let's give it a try. Xiao Shi nodded. If it had been someone else, they might not have understood Chu Li's concern for the nation and the people. They might have felt that he was being a busybody and asking for trouble. However, as the young ladies of the public house, they had been nurtured since they were young and had a broad mind. They could not only care about themselves, so they supported Chu Li's decision. Chu Li looked at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi nodded. Don't worry, I'll take care of them. Chu Li then looked at Pang Shiji. Don't let your mistress worry too much. Focus on your cultivation. Then, he looked at Li Ming. Li Ming hurriedly said, "Don't worry, martial uncle. I won't meddle." Chu Li nodded. He grabbed Seo Shi's wrist and disappeared. Early in the morning, the Jin Gang temple was shrouded in purple mist. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. This was the purple energy harvested from heaven and earth. It was the purest energy. The pagoda and the formation were harvesting this purple energy to nourish and strengthen the titanium temple. The temple door was tightly shut. Chu Li and Seo Shi stood outside the temple. Through the observation of the omniscient mirror, he could vaguely see that the monks in the temple were gathered together through the golden light. He went forward and knocked on the temple door. The entire titanium temple only had the temple door, as the rest of the place was covered by the formation. Suin quickly appeared and opened the temple door to invite them in. "What's going on inside? Is it appropriate for us to go in?" Chu Li asked. Suin said, "Chief Chu Li and our temple have a long history. There's no need to be an outsider. Please come in." After Seo Shi and Chu Li entered the temple door, they saw more than 20 red-shirt monks sitting at the bottom of the steps. There were middle-aged monks, old monks, and young novice monks. She could not help but ask, "What's going on?" "Honorable Master Jiyu is about to preach." Suin said, "Preach?" Seo Shi looked at Chu Li. "Why don't we stay outside the temple for a while?" Chu Li smiled. "I wanted to listen to the preach." Seo Shi rolled her eyes. She did not want to listen to an old monk's nagging. She would rather cultivate for a while. Now that she belonged to the Tai Ching sect, she did not walk the same path as Buddhism, so she did not want to listen. Chu Li smiled. Listening to the preach of a master is bound to be rewarding. This is a rare opportunity. You can't even come across it. Suin smiled and nodded in agreement. Honorable Master Ji only preaches once every 10 years. All right, let's listen then. Seo Shi said. The monks did not react to their arrival. It was as if they did not know. They sat with the curtains closed, motionless as if they were meditating. Sun also sat down. Seo Shi sat beside him. Just as she was about to speak, Chu Li pulled her sleeve and gave her a look. Seo Shi shut her mouth and looked around. Slow footsteps were heard. An old monk in red slowly walked out of the temple. He stood on the steps and sat down slowly. The old monk was skinny. He walked shakily as if he could fall at any time. His loose red robe swayed on his body as if there was no body in the robe. A gust of wind could blow the robe and the old monk up into the sky. Chu Li's face turned serious. Although the omniscient mirror was restrained and its power was greatly reduced, he could still see the 3 halos at the back of the old monk's head. They emitted a gentle radiance. Amitabha Buddha. Monk Jiyu sat cross-legged on the steps. He put his skinny hands together and chanted the name of Buddha. Amitabha Buddha. The monks chanted the name of Buddha. Chu Li's vision blurred and suddenly changed. It was as if he was standing on the surface of the sea. The seawater swayed and his body swayed, but he did not sink. He was only floating on the surface of the sea. There was a huge lotus in the void. An old monk sat cross-legged on the lotus. It was Monk Jiyu. A bright moon appeared behind Monk Jiyu's head. It emitted a gentle radiance that enveloped his body and Chu Li, who was standing on the surface of the sea. Amitabha Buddha. Monk Jiyu spoke slowly. His voice was gentle and sweet. It was indescribably moving. One could not help but want to listen to it. As I have heard, a Buddhist doctrine that Chu Li had never heard before was softly chanted. Without Monk Jiyu's explanation, Chu Li naturally understood. Suddenly, Mahavairocana's immobility scripture moved. The scenery in front of him quickly disappeared. He then realized that he was still sitting at the bottom of the steps. Monk Jiyu was sitting on the steps. Amitabha Buddha. Monk Jiyu's chants echoed in Chu Li's ears. He looked up. Monk Jiyu was looking at him quietly. Their eyes met in the air. Chu Li pressed his palms together. Monk Jiyu nodded slightly. He took out a string of prayer beads and tossed it to Chu Li. The pitch-black prayer beads landed in front of Chu Li. Chu Li reached out to receive it and pressed his palms together. He knew that the gift from Monk Jiyu was not an ordinary item. When their eyes met, there was a tacit understanding between them. He knew that Monk Jiyu cultivated Mahavairocana's immobility scripture. He never thought that Mahavairocana's immobility scripture could have such a magical effect. He had been using it to strengthen his mind and not be confused by foreign objects. Now, it seemed like it could be used to confuse foreign objects. Chapter 1897. The Mahavairocana in the void of his mind opened his eyes. The Mahavairocana's immobility scripture was activated, and the black prayer beads in his hand suddenly turned into a golden light and entered between his eyebrows. The golden light directly entered between the eyebrows of the Mahavairocana in the void of his mind. Suddenly, an eye appeared between Mahavairocana's eyebrows. The vertical eye was different from a human's eye. It was stern and compassionate. A realization flowed in his mind, and he immediately understood the name of this eye. It was called the Eye of Dharma Relaying. This Eye of Dharma Relaying was only one of the magical effects of the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture, but it was difficult to know without the inheritance. Without the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture, this Eye of Dharma Relaying could not be used, as it would confuse one's mind. Most importantly, without sufficient soul energy, one could not withstand this Eye of Dharma Relaying. Monk Jiyu passed this Eye of Dharma Relaying to him because he could escape from the realm created by the Eye of Dharma Relaying. Chuli opened his eyes and bowed with pressed palms again. Such a magical technique was passed down to him. He owed the Titanium Temple a huge favor. Monk Jiyu smiled and turned to enter the basilica. At this time, the monks were still immersed in the illusion created by the Eye of Dharma Relaying. As they listened to the Dharma, their bodies and minds were intoxicated. Chuli turned his head and patted Suin lightly. Suin immediately woke up from the illusion. His expression was calm and serene. It was obvious that he was enlightened and his Dharma had improved. "Follow me," Chuli said. Suin got up and walked out with Chu Li and Xiao Shi to a gazebo outside the temple. The ancient gazebo was located in a pine forest. A breeze blew and the pine trees rustled. "Suin, you have to go back and be the emperor," Chuli said. Suin was stunned and wanted to say something. Chuli waved his hand and said, "Let me finish." He then told him in detail about what happened with Lung Shorin and King Ping. Suin listened thoughtfully. Chuli said, "You chose to use the Dharma to enlighten the people, but when you need to save them, you run away. If you don't face the difficulties, how can your Dharma improve?" Xiao Shi was a little anxious. These words might not work. Suin's sword-like eyebrows moved, but he remained silent. Chuli said, "The 10 lifetimes of Buddhahood technique is marvelous, but it's not easy to cultivate it. The experience of being an emperor is also a great training for you. Ordinary people don't have such an opportunity. Only by experiencing the most prosperous of the world can you truly see through the mortal world and have a perfect Buddha's heart. Because you're afraid of prosperity, you're afraid of being trapped in it. This is not beneficial to your Buddha's heart, and it'll be difficult to perfect it. But I need enough time to cultivate." Suin sighed and said, "Once you fall into the world of mortals, you will not be able to control yourself. You will be busy with the affairs of the country all day long. How would you have the time to cultivate and waste this life?" Chu Li shook his head. "It's not that there's no way around it." Suin looked at him in surprise. Chu Li said, "Let her help." She pointed at Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi pointed at herself and glared at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled and said, "Second eldest sister, you have nothing to do anyway. You can help Suin deal with the affairs of the court. You're very clear about the affairs of the court. Moreover, you've been influenced by the public house since you were young, so you're more proficient than ordinary people. I can't do it myself. I still need younger sister." Xiao Shi said, "In terms of understanding the human heart, I'm not as good as younger sister. Moreover, younger sister has always been dealing with the matters of the public house. She's better at dealing with the affairs of the court. It was not difficult to treat the country as the public house. The key was that she had Chu Li to support her, so there was nothing to be afraid of." Chu Li turned his head and smiled at Su, and "You can just bear the title of emperor and ignore the mundane affairs. Let them take care of it. If that's the case, I can only agree, Suin said slowly. He was moved by Chu Li's Buddha's heart. In order to have a Buddha's heart, one needed to be courageous and diligent. The fear of the throne was indeed a demon in one's heart. It would be difficult to achieve perfection, so he had to face the difficulties head-on. Moreover, even if he became the emperor, he would not have to worry about too many things. He could still continue to cultivate. This could not be better. Chu Li let out a smile. Seo sure smiled and said, "That's right." Chu Li said, "Then let's return to the fairy's capital." "Yes," Suin said slowly. "I'll pack my bag and leave today." Chu Li nodded. Seo sure said, "I'll wait for you at the imperial residence." Suin bowed with pressed palms. After he agreed, he suddenly felt relieved. It was an indescribable feeling of relief. The thoughts that were bothering him dispersed, and his cultivation level actually improved. Lung Shorin was drinking by himself in the imperial garden. Chu Li suddenly appeared. Lung Shorin wore a bright yellow robe that shone under the light. When he saw Chu Li, he put down his wine glass and shook his head. "Do you know about Fourth Brother's ascension?" "That's why I'm here." Chu Li nodded. Lung Shorin sighed and raised his wine glass again. "I really can't understand Fourth Brother's thoughts. He didn't sit on the throne and directly ascended just to accompany his wife. It's really," Chu Li said, "His Royal Highness has already lost a princess and can't accompany her. If he can't accompany the second princess, he won't be able to forgive himself. Moreover, he's tired of the country's affairs." Sigh. Lung Shorin shook his head. "What a stubborn fellow." Chu Li smiled and said, "Your Majesty, have you thought about who to pass the throne to?" Suin, Lung Shorin said, "As long as you convince Suin to take over the throne, I'll pass the throne to him." Chu Li smiled. "Your Majesty, you're not satisfied, right? Or are you thinking about Lung Feng?" "I've thought it through." Lung Shorin shook his head. "Feng Heir doesn't have this life. He can't afford it. I want you to promise me that you must ensure that the Empress lives a prosperous life. You can't mistreat her." Chu Li slowly nodded. "Don't worry, Your Majesty. As long as I'm here, I'll ensure that the Empress lives a prosperous life." "That's good." Lung Shorin sighed. "I owe Feng Heir, but I owe the Empress even more." Chu Li smiled. "Your Majesty, you're thinking too much. The Empress will live a good life. I'll think of a way for the Empress to cultivate martial arts and reach the Grandmaster's boundary so that she can reunite with the Emperor in the future." Lung Shorin smiled, but he did not believe him. Chu Li asked, "How did Consort Ping die?" "She was killed by a celestial being." Lung Shorin said, "I wanted to help, but I was held back by another celestial being." "Celestial being?" Chu Li frowned. "It should be a grudge between sections." Lung Shorin said, "There are sects and grudges in the Grandmaster's boundary too. Now that this world is involved, chaos is inevitable. Chu Li, no matter how strong you are, can you stop these celestial beings from attacking you? They have a heavy responsibility, and they still dare to mess around." Chu Li frowned. Lung Shorin said, "The mission is first, but if we meet our enemies while we're completing the mission, will the celestial beings tolerate it? After they came to this world, they became unscrupulous and hot-tempered. How can they tolerate it?" Chu Li slowly nodded. "If it was a grudge between sects, it should be a grudge between the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens. Lu Yurong was also from the mysterious Lady of Nine Heavens, so she should not be able to escape. Fortunately, Lu Yurong was not in danger." As soon as this thought appeared in his mind suddenly moved, and he disappeared from the spot. The next moment, he appeared in the Ren public house. The Ren public house was ablaze, illuminating the entire public house. The public house seemed to be in a sea of fire. Amidst the fireworks, there were people fighting everywhere. Chu Li frowned and looked in the direction of Lu Yurong. Chapter 1898. Seeing the four of them teaming up against Lu Yurong. The white veil covering Lu Yurong's face was dyed red with blood, and her eyes were dull. The elusive ninth heaven fairy above her head was also dull, as if it would disappear at any time. Chu Li was furious. He used the omniscient mirror and suppressed his anger. He was not in a hurry to act, but observed carefully first. The four celestial beings all had a blood-red moon above their heads. The blood moon was absorbing spiritual energy from heaven and earth crazily. It could even directly absorb spiritual energy from the outland and continuously send it into their bodies to maintain their violent attacks. Lu Yurong's elusive ninth heaven fairy was also absorbing spiritual energy, but under the dull light, the absorption speed was far slower than the blood moon. The spiritual energy absorbed by the blood moon seemed to be extremely violent, causing the four celestial beings to become fearless. They attacked desperately, disregarding their own injuries. Lu Yurong originally injured them and had the upper hand, but she was suppressed to the point where she could not breathe and her life was in danger. Chu Li shook his head. Lu Yurong had obviously used a secret skill and was in a state of collapse. She would not be able to hold on soon. If it was someone else, they would have been seriously injured or even dead. She was completely relying on her wisdom to struggle and buy time. Chu Li's killing intent rose. The god-punishing thunder sword in his mind instantly turned into dozens of god-punishing needles and shot towards the 36 grandmasters who invaded the Rin public house. Those who were attacking suddenly screamed and then fell to the ground, holding their heads and rolling. Some were strong enough to hold back their screams, but still held their heads and rolled. The pain had exceeded their endurance limit, and they could not control their bodies. This time, Chu Li did not show up directly but hid in the dark. The feeling of hiding in the dark and plotting against others was very exciting. Lu Yurong only felt an invisible force surging into her body. After it entered her body, it immediately turned into her own strength. Her originally empty body was instantly filled to the brim, and her skills were restored to their original state. In fact, it was even continuously increasing, and she immediately felt refreshed. She immediately knew that Chu Li had come, and her heart could not help but calm down. Bam, 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 bam. She felt stronger than before. When she hit with her palm, the power was twice as strong as before. She gritted her teeth and used the secret skill again. The mysterious fairy of the 9 heavens and the void above his head began to become clear. Spiritual chi surged down like a river. Even if an ordinary person looked carefully, they would be able to vaguely see a shadow. The influx of this inner force not only strengthened her inner force, but it also nourished her spirit and restored its vigor. Only then could she perform the secret skill for the second time and exert the Empyrean fairy power to its fullest potential. Chu Li frowned as he looked at the maids who were fending off the other grandmasters. If they did not leave Lu Yurong's side and the 10 of them worked together, these 4 celestial beings would not be able to do anything to Lu Yurong. However, Chu Li could also guess that Lu Yurong could only do this. She had no other choice. The protectors of the Rin public house could not stop the 36 invading grandmasters, so she could only send out her maids. Chu Li suppressed his anger and only helped them secretly. Lu Yurong continued to wave her palms, once again suppressing the 4 celestial beings. Even though they risked their lives to fight, in front of absolute power, they were beaten back again and again, unable to pose any threat to Lu Yurong. Lu Yurong suddenly shouted. The Empyrean fairy palm suddenly became illusory, turned into several shadows, and shot at the 4 celestial beings at the same time. Their eyes were bloodshot as they fought with their lives. Facing this palm shadow, they did not hesitate to take it head-on. Then, with a bang-bang sound, they were shaken and spat out blood in the air. Chu Li shook his head. These celestial beings were quite strange. The blood moon above their heads was definitely problematic. It could affect their minds, or else these 4 celestial beings would not be so reckless. However, their strength was indeed extremely strong. Lu Yurong cultivated in Goddess Attraction Mountain and even took the sky soaring pill. Her cultivation level was not something a grandmaster could compare to. Although she was not as good as an enlightened master, she was only a step away. These 4 celestial beings were able to force her into this state. It was very impressive. Bang, 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 bang. Lu Yurong did not let them go. Her body moved like lightning, chasing after the 4 celestial beings to beat them. In the end, The four celestial beings turned into four rays of light and shot into the sky, entering the slowly appearing divine gate, and then the divine gate disappeared. Lu Yurong's body was like a shadow, quickly passing through the entire Ren public house, killing the 36 grandmasters one by one, not leaving a single one alive. Her ruthlessness did not lose to Chu Li's. Chu Li watched from the side. These 36 grandmasters had killed many Ren public house protectors before he came. At this time, these protectors of the Ren public house who were killed were being fed spirit blessing pills. With the spirit blessing pill, almost all of them could live, but it was also a waste of a spirit blessing pill. One spirit blessing pill was equivalent to one life. As the relationship between Ren public house and E-public house improved, E-public house gave Ren public house a batch of spirit blessing pills. Almost every protector was given one, but it was impossible to supply them all the time. Lu Yurong was even more furious. If it was not for Chu Li's appearance today, Ren public house would have been destroyed. After she finished off these grandmasters in one go, she returned to the pagoda in the backyard and sat down. Chu Li appeared in the pagoda. Who are they? Chu Li sat opposite her. Lu Yurong's face was pale. She had cast another secret skill. Even though she had taken spirit medicine, she still could not hide the feeling of weakness. Compared to her usual self, she looked lovely and even more pitiful. She did not have her usual peerless beauty. Red Moon Sect. Lu Yurong shook her head. They are the mortal enemy of the mysterious lady of the 9 heavens. Chu Li frowned. Once the celestial descends, dragons and snakes rise from the land. I thought the Red Moon Sect was lost. I didn't expect them to have a successor. Moreover, they are more powerful than the mysterious lady of the 9 heavens. Lu Yurong frowned. Fortunately, they were taken care of this time. When Chu Li heard that the future trouble was taken care of, he did not ask any more and changed the topic. King Ping and Consort Ping ascended together. Consort Ping ascended because of the Red Moon Sect. Lu Yurong pursed her red lips and scoffed. I just found out too. She died before she could call for help. Chu Li nodded. Dying was just ascending to the Grandmaster's boundary. It was only a short separation. He did not care much and continued. Once King Ping died, the throne fell to Su, and didn't Su not want to be the emperor? We can only force him. Suvan is really pitiful. Lu Yurong shook her head. Others only saw the emperor's power, but she knew the emperor's helplessness and hardships. There's no other way. He has to suffer for the sake of the people. Chu Li said, he needs to focus on his cultivation. Second eldest sister and my wife will take care of the affairs of the imperial court. Come and help them. Me? Lu Yurong chuckled. Forget it. She always felt uneasy in front of Shao Qi. Chu Li said, you can continue to be the commander of the Secret Guardians Hall. Lu Yurong was about to decline, but she swallowed her words. If it was any other position, she would not be interested and would not want to be involved in these matters. However, the Secret Guardians Hall was different. It was a place that she had spent a lot of effort on, so she could not bear to abandon it. Chu Li smiled. The Secret Guardians Hall is like a group of dragons without a leader. It's now just a decoration. The Secret Guardians Hall will only be able to unleash its greatest power under your leadership. In the future, the other countries might even turn pale at the mention of it. All right, I'll take over the Secret Guardians Hall again. Lu Yurong said. Chu Li's smile widened. That's great. Lu Yurong said, have you thought about whether Shao Qi and Shao Shi will offend the courtiers if they get involved in politics? Women's status was still far inferior to men. It was also a taboo for women to get involved in politics. The courtiers would never tolerate it. I can only think of a way to hide it, Chu Li said. No matter how strong he was, he could not change the people's view that women should not be involved in politics. How can it be hidden? Lu Yurong shook her head. A storm is inevitable. Chu Li slowly nodded with a serious expression. Chapter 1899. I have a way to resolve it, Lu Yurong said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Lu Yurong looked at him with a smile. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. All right, please advise me, Miss Lu. Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, you can think of it too. It's just that you're in the middle of it. Chu pondered and shook his head. I don't have the time. Your reputation in the Ji dynasty is unparalleled. Not even the emperor. Lu Yurong smiled. Especially this time, you've avoided a war between the two countries. It's a great merit. Everyone remembers it. Chu Li sighed. It's good enough that they don't scold me for being a busybody. Lu Yurong smiled. Justice is in the hearts of the people. Except for those with ulterior motives, everyone knows what's good for them. Chu Li nodded. Unfortunately, I'm always busy, and I have to cultivate in isolation. Where would I have the time to care about the matters of the court? It's fine if you don't care. Lu Yurong said, as long as it's a name, the Shao sisters can handle in secret. One in the open and one in the dark. No one can say anything. Chu Li remained silent. If that was the case, he would inevitably be labeled as a powerful official and would be cursed. No matter if the court did well or not, there would always be people who would curse. Where there were people, there would be conflicts of interest, and once it hindered the interests of some people, he would be cursed. More importantly, after he reached this realm, he had no interest in worldly power. There was no joy in it. If he could control the emperor, why would he care about the emperor's position? However, if he really took charge of the state affairs, people would inevitably wonder if he wanted to be the emperor. Was he going to usurp the throne? By then, he would be stuck with a bunch of troubles that he could not get rid of. Lu Yurong seemed to have seen through his thoughts. She smiled. Don't tell me you still care about your feathers? Chu Li replied. I care about my feathers, and I don't want to get into trouble. Even if people objected to Shao Qi and Shao Shi meddling in the affairs of the court, they would not think of usurping the throne because they were women and could not be the emperor. There had never been a female emperor, and the people would not be convinced. But Chu Li was different. Not only was he a man, but more importantly, he was an enlightened master. There was a high chance he would become the emperor, and even the Grand Master would not object. Lu Yurong smiled. You really don't want to be the emperor? No. Chu Li shook his head. It's not like you don't know the difficulties of being an emperor. That's true. Lu Yurong nodded. Chu Li scoffed. I'm afraid that once Su and becomes the emperor and my wife and second eldest sister take over the government, the other 10 public houses will not behave themselves. I'll think of a way to handle it. Lu Yurong smiled. The Secret Guardians Hall and the High Duke's public house have always been enemies. Chu Li nodded. It was reassuring to leave the matter to Lu Yurong. There's also the matter of the celestial beings, Chu Li said in a low voice. More and more celestial beings have descended. I feel that something is off. Lu Yurong's beautiful face retracted her smile as she frowned. Something's not right. Chu Li said, the first order of business for the Secret Guardians Hall is to investigate the heavenly men and see how many heavenly men there are in the Great Ji dynasty. We'll try our best to monitor every single one of them. Lu Yurong nodded lightly. I'll handle it. Chu Li stood up and said, go to the fairy's capital as soon as possible. Suan will ascend the throne soon. Lu Yurong said, we'll leave in 2 days. Help the High Duke's public house set up a formation. The public house's formation is very good. She did not expect that someone would really dare to break into the Ren public house. There were no signs at all. There would be a next time. The Ren public house needed a formation. Chu Li nodded without hesitation. He took out 8 pieces of jade talismans. They were all the size of a baby's palm and threw them out. The jade talismans turned into rays of white light and shot in all directions. After a while, fog began to gather around the Ren public house like clouds and mist. The people of the Ren public house did not care at first. They thought that it was a sudden change in the weather. Later, the fog became thicker and they could not see beyond 5 steps. They then realized that something was wrong and shouted. However, their shouts could not travel beyond 5 steps. They immediately fell into panic. Chu Li smiled as he looked down at the people. After a quarter of an hour, the fog dissipated and everything returned to normal. Chu Li took out a palm-sized jasper talisman from his inner pocket. This is the core of the formation. As long as you channel it, you'll be able to activate the formation. This technique can cause spiritual energy to be disrupted so that no spiritual energy can be used. Lu Yurong smiled and took it. Thank you very much. Chu Li glanced at her. Lu Yurong smiled. then I won't stand on ceremony. I can only leave with peace of mind with the formation. Truly nodded. Go to the fairies' capital as soon as possible. I'm leaving. He disappeared in a flash after saying that. In the evening, the sun was setting. Goddess Attraction Mountain was bathed in the light of the setting sun, as if it was painted with a layer of red. He appeared in Joe Dunley's basilica and sat on the cattail hassock in front of Joe Dunley. Beside him was his senior, Dong Jinshin. Dong Jinshin was dressed in a blue robe. He had a strong aura. He had not seen him for a while, and his cultivation level had increased greatly. It could be said that he had advanced by leaps and bounds. He knew that this was the result of his master's meticulous training. Master, Chu Li broke the silence of the basilica. There are more and more celestials descending. This is not a good sign. Master, I want to know, will there be more celestials descending? Joe Dunley opened his eyes. His expression was inexplicably complicated. He sighed and shook his head. Chu Li knew what he meant when he saw his expression. Heaven's will could not be disobeyed. If that was the case, then it was not good news. That should mean that the celestials would continue to descend. Chu Li frowned. The celestials have already caused chaos in the world. If more of them descend, it will be even more chaotic. The celestials are now starting to attack each other. The mortals will suffer. If this continues, it will really become a chaotic world. Joe Dunley sighed. You better not interfere in this matter. Don't go against the Grandmasters. Chu Li said, I can't just watch them destroy this world, can I? It can't be destroyed. Joe Dunley shook his head. This world is more resistant to chaos than you think. Don't worry. Chu Li smiled bitterly. Master, has something like this happened before? Joe Dunley hesitated and slowly said, How do you think the antique studies of the Grandmasters were passed down? Today, the original spirit beast martial arts of the various sects had declined. Most of the remaining martial arts were Grandmasters' martial arts. For example, the Holy Church of Light's Great Light Scripture, the Tempest Temple's Dharma and martial arts, the Heavenly Demon Scripture, and other martial arts were almost all passed down from the Grandmasters. Chu Li frowned. He had read many ancient books, but there were no records of the Celestials descending. This was too strange. No matter how powerful they were, it was impossible to control everyone's pen and all the books in the world. Joe Dunley shook his head. You can't fight against the Grandmasters anymore. Otherwise, they will destroy you regardless of anything. Chu Li said, I can't let these Celestials harm the people. The Grandmasters have accepted your suggestion. Joe Dunley said calmly. Soon, there will be a martial arts competition to fight for the title of the world's #1 master. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Chapter 1900. Joe Dunley said, The final winner will challenge you. If you win, you'll be the world's #1. If you lose, you'll still be the world's #1. Chu Li said, I don't want to participate in this. The world's #1 did not have any practical use. It was just a title and a target. Everyone wanted to use his name to shock the world, so there was an endless stream of challengers. If it was not for the High Duke's public house in Goddess Attraction Mountain, he would have been annoyed to death. With his current reputation, even if he was not the world's #1, it was enough to deter others. That's not up to you. Joe Dunley shook his head. In my opinion, it's better to participate. If you can really become invincible, then you'll be able to intimidate everyone and save yourself a lot of trouble. How many years is the martial arts competition held? Chu Li asked. 2 years, Joe Dunley said. Chu Li nodded. Joe Dunley said, The world's #1 will have a great reward. For this reward, you should fight for it. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Joe Dunley smiled. It's definitely something you can't refuse. It's a good thing in the Outland, and even more precious in this world. All right, Chu Li nodded. Joe Dunley said, Now that you're the world's #1, you only need to participate in the last round. It's a preferential treatment. Chu Li nodded. He was also curious about what reward the Outland would give and whether he would be tempted. Joe Dunley said, According to the information I received, it might be a treasured clothing. Chu Li was excited. Although his floating silkworm treasured clothing was useless to him, he could let Shao Qi wear it. Shao Shi, Lu Yurong, and Pang Shurji all needed treasured clothing. It was a life-saving item that could only be found. Are you tempted? Zhou dumbly smiled. Chu Li said, if it's really a treasured clothing, then I'll have to fight for it. Zhou dumbly smiled. The elders of the Outland are very experienced and ruthless. They won't allow you to refuse. Chu Li nodded. He turned to look at senior brother Dong Jianxin. Dong Jianxin did not open his eyes and did not wake up. Seeing the heart is the key. Once you pass this stage, you'll be able to improve greatly and become an enlightened master. Zhou dumbly said. Chu Li said, Senior brother, you've worked too hard. How can it not be hard to become an Empyrean god? Zhou dumbly shook his head. He doesn't work hard enough usually. The so-called hard work was not only about burying one's head in cultivation, but also exhausting one's mental energy. What Dong Jian had put in his heart was hard work, and it was only because he was stingy with his mental energy that it was so difficult. Otherwise, the disciples of Immortal Attraction Mountain would not have fallen behind others, and it would have been easy for them to take over the position of heavenly deity. Chu Li smiled. I'll help from the side. No need. Zhou dumbly shook his head. He can only rely on himself. No one else can help him. I can only watch from the side. Senior brother, I'm trapped in an illusion and need to come out on my own. Chu Li Fist saluted and bade farewell. The backyard of the imperial residence of King and was brightly lit as if it was daytime. Chu Li sat in the middle with Lu Yurong, Shao Qi, and Xiao Shi sitting beside him. The four of them were dressed in snow-white robes. Only Suru was dressed in an apricot yellow gown. Each of their beautiful faces made the fresh flowers in the backyard pale in comparison. So far, there are a total of 22 Celestials in Fairy's capital. Lu Yurong put down her teacup and said softly, Fortunately, they're relatively peaceful, but it's hard to say what they'll do next. Chu Li nodded. Xiao Shi asked, There's no way to drive these Celestials away, right? It'll be difficult. Lu Yurong shook her head. They're all hiding their identities, and we can't drive them away for no reason. We can't just drive them away just because they're Celestials, or else we'll incur the wrath of the Celestials. Shao Qi asked, Can't we do it under other names? They're all connected to each other, Lu Yurong said. If we drive them away, they'll quickly realize it. Moreover, these Celestials' martial arts aren't bad, unless Chu Li does it himself. Chu Li was deep in thought. It was not appropriate for him to go against the wind and deal with the Celestials now. He needed a sufficient reason and excuse to do it, or else the Grandmasters would wholeheartedly kill him, and Shao Qi and the others would be the unlucky ones. Xiao Shi suggested, How about we put on a show and trap these Celestials to give Chu Li an excuse to do it? That's a good idea. Lu Yurong smiled sweetly. I'll think of a way to provoke 2 Celestials and have them barge into the Secret Guardian's Hall or the Imperial Residence. Then, I'll execute a chain of punishments to catch these Celestials in one fell swoop. Celestials were proud and arrogant. Even with an enlightened master like Chu Li suppressing them and killing them easily, they still could not get rid of their deep-rooted arrogance. They viewed the people of this world as mere mortals, an existence that was inferior to them. That was why they could not stand being offended by mortals. It was too easy to provoke them, and these Celestials treated the nobles as nothing, thinking that they were just a bunch of trash that was not worth mentioning. It was easy to take advantage of this weakness and set up a trap to trap them. Shao Qi said, Don't overdo it. It's best if no one dies. It won't work if no one dies. Xiao Shi shook her head. How can an undead be worth Chu Li's effort? Then I'll die. Lu Yurong smiled. I'm the commander of the Secret Guardian's Hall. How can Chu Li not be angry if I'm killed by them? That's not bad. Xiao Shi chuckled. You're now Chu Li's woman in name. It will be strange if Chu Li doesn't go crazy. Even if he does, you can't blame him. Shao Qi frowned. They might not fall for it. Chu Li's reputation for killing was extremely strong. He had killed so many Celestials, and with his title as the world's #1 master, it had become a great deterrent. The fact that the Celestials did not cause trouble in the Fairy's capital and did not act recklessly was also because of Chu Li's deterrent power. The Celestials from other places would not be so peaceful. Outsiders knew Lu Yurong's identity. The Celestials would not know, but they might not dare to kill her. Lu Yurong said, if they dare to break into the secret Guardian's Hall, it's not up to them anymore. Xiao Qi nodded. She understood what Lu Yurong was thinking. Xiao Shi chuckled. Lu Yurong, you're really bad. Same here. Lu Yurong chuckled. Chu Li shook his head and laughed. They were all intelligent people, and when they discussed together, they came up with ideas that were even scarier. Leave it to me, Lu Yurong said. Chu Li nodded. With the three of them around, the imperial court did not have to worry about him. The key was still to cultivate in isolation. On the evening of the second day, the whole city was in an uproar. The secret Guardian's Hall was wiped out by 4 Celestials, and the secret Guardians suffered heavy casualties. Even the commander of the secret Guardian's Hall, the Lady of the Ren Public House, Lu Yurong, was killed by the Celestials. This move shocked the entire fairies' capital, and even the whole Ji dynasty. Everyone was waiting to see if Chu Li would make a move. Lu Yurong was one of Chu Li's women, and she was married to him legally, so Chu Li would not let it go. On the third night, the result was out. Chu Li killed the 4 Celestials in anger, and then the entire fairies' capital began to ban Celestials from entering. Celestials despised the country's laws and ignored secular morality. They were really black sheep, and the fairies' capital could not tolerate the existence of these Celestials. Chapter 1901. Everyone in Fairies' capital applauded and praised Chu Li incessantly. He's head Chief Chu indeed. He should have taught these Celestials a lesson long ago. Chief Chu is so domineering. He's a great honor to the people of the Fairies' capital. Those who were not of the same race were bound to have different intentions. Although the Celestials did not do anything to anger the heavens and the people after they descended, their arrogance caused dissatisfaction in their every move. As time passed, the dissatisfaction grew. In the beginning, the Celestials would hide their identity. Later on, when they saw that the other Celestials did not hide their identity and acted openly, they decided to do so. The identity of Celestial could save them a lot of unnecessary trouble. Everything had its pros and cons. As such, it was inevitable that it would cause dissatisfaction. Chu Li's action was in line with the times and won the hearts of the people. 3 days later, Sun ascended the throne and became the new emperor of the Ji dynasty. He was given the title of Enlightened Master. The night was hazy and the backyard was brightly lit. Chu Li, Xiao Shi, Xiao Qi, and Lu Yurong sat in the pagoda. Opposite them was Su, and Hui Qing had just left. Sun was still in his red robe. Under the light, his bald head shone brightly. Chu Li smiled. We've finally come this far. Back then, he had put in a lot of effort and laid out a plan. He did not expect it to be so easy after he became an enlightened master. Many of the plans could not be put to use. He planned to hand over the previous preparations to Xiao Shi and let her manage it. Xiao Shi was very talented in the court. She was even better than Xiao Qi, who had been managing the High Duke's public house. No matter how strong Chu Li's martial arts was, he was only one person. The Ji dynasty was a vast land. No matter how strong his martial arts was, he could not rule the world by himself. Even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he could not do anything. He needed the chancellors and officials to rule. Sun bowed with pressed palms. He knew that Chu Li had put in a lot of effort for him to become the emperor. Otherwise, he would not have become the emperor. No matter what, after becoming an enlightened master, his vision had broadened and he had a new understanding of the 10 lifetimes of Buddhahood. It was very beneficial for his cultivation. Chu Li waved his hand. It won't be easy from now on. I'm going to go into isolated cultivation, so you'll have to handle the court affairs yourselves. Those old foxes in the court aren't easy to deal with. Therefore, these officials could not be easily killed. Without sufficient evidence, it could not be punished. Otherwise, if they incurred the wrath of the masses, the court officials would be furious and stop the court. The ones who would suffer would be the common people. There might be many places suffering from disasters and waiting for relief. Lu Yurong said, "Don't worry, They won't be able to escape our grasp. She was very clear about the weaknesses of these officials. She was not afraid that they would be dishonest if she targeted their weaknesses. The three of them formed a small conference hall. Many of the ministers could not accept that the affairs of the country were in the hands of women, but as long as they could endure the early stages, they would slowly get used to it. This was the nature of humans. Chu Li nodded slowly. Suen said, Chief Chu, don't worry. I won't go into seclusion immediately. Chu Li smiled. No matter what, Suen was the most important person and also the Chancellor's cover. As long as Suen attended the court every day, even if the memorials were read by C.O. Shi and the other two ladies, the chancellors would not be able to say anything. C.O. Shi was now the Empress Dowager, so she could not let the Emperor see the Empress Dowager. It was against the morals of a son. C.O. Shi said, Suen just needs to take some time out to attend the court every day. Don't delay your cultivation. The 10 lifetimes of Buddhahood technique would allow him to become a Buddha. Moreover, Suen's Buddhist nature was very good. She could not let the throne delay his cultivation and prevent him from becoming a Buddha. If he really could not become a Buddha, because of this, it would be a sin. Chu Li nodded lightly. That's good too. Suen bowed with pressed palms and nodded. Lu Yurong said, the current situation in the court is that the 4 powerful chancellors are colluding with each other. It seems like they're doing the right thing, but there are actually 2 families that have secretly formed an alliance. They control more than half of the matters in the court. We need to give them a warning or even split them up. Then we'll replace both of them. Xiao Shi frowned. Suen's an Arhat. It's inevitable that the chancellors will feel that he is merciful and forgiving. They will unknowingly indulge themselves and act presumptuously. They need to understand that Suen is an Arhat, but he is a strict person. He will not tolerate others breaking the law. That's right. Lu Yurong nodded. Xiao Qi nodded lightly. Should we kill them or demote them? Lu Yurong said, in my opinion, we should demote them. We can't kill them indiscriminately. The disciples of these 2 chancellors are all over the court. If we kill them, it will affect many people, and the court will be in turmoil. As the saying goes, a new emperor brings his own ministers. If we demote them, the people will have nothing to say. They might even think that it's only natural. If we don't demote them, how can we make room for our own confidence? Then we'll demote them, Xiao Qi said. Second eldest sister, it's best not to involve too many people. Of course, Xiao Shi said. Now that the external situation was unfavorable and chaos was gradually emerging, the court needed to be stabilized. A sudden purge would cause unrest in the court, which would not be beneficial to the stability of the Ji dynasty. As the Ji dynasty's Empress Dowager, she would naturally not act recklessly. Chu Li smiled. With the 3 of them discussing, there was really nothing that could be difficult. One was calm, one was intelligent, and one was quick-witted. With them helping each other, he believed that the Ji dynasty's court would be peaceful and he would not have to worry too much. Under the morning sun, the floating mountain seemed to be shrouded in golden light. Thousands of golden rays shone on the mountain, and the entire floating mountain was dazzling. Chu Li appeared outside the floating mountain's heaven's punishment hall. He closed fist saluted. Subordinate Bailey Na greets the hall leader. Come in. Elder Fong's lazy voice was heard. Chu Li strode into the heaven's punishment hall. When he lifted the curtain, he saw the spirit tiger's corpse. The spirit ocean was still oppressive. He took a deep breath and came to the center of the hall, facing Elder Fong, who was sitting in the armchair. Elder Fong was dressed in green and looked like a spring flower. She elegantly put down her scroll and looked at Chu Li. What took you so long? Chu Li replied, I met 2 celestials and got into a fight. I was slightly injured. You're always so lucky. Elder Fong scoffed. Did you get anything else? I even got a stalk of Yiming grass. Chu Li took out a small box from his sleeve and presented it with both hands. This was Senior Guo's order. He wanted a stalk of Yiming grass. Guo Zhongjing. Elder Fong frowned. Chu Li nodded. Elder Guo promised to exchange this stalk of Yiming grass for the unique king technique. The unique king technique. Elder Fong shook her head helplessly. She had asked for it before, but failed. She did not expect Guo Zhongjing to be so generous. It was obvious that the Yingming grass was extremely difficult to obtain. Where did you get it? Elder Fong asked. Chu smiled. I wanted to look for it at 100,000 Hills, but I didn't expect to stumble upon it. I didn't go to 100,000 Hills. That's good. Elder Fong nodded. She also realized that Chu Li was extremely lucky. Every time he was in danger, he would be able to turn misfortune into fortune. To others, he was just unlucky. Otherwise, he would not have encountered so many dangers. However, from another perspective, he was also lucky. Every time he could escape danger, he would improve. Chu Li smiled. I wonder if Senior will keep his promise. He won't. You can get the unique king technique. Elder Fong smiled. Chu Li smiled. Hall leader, I heard that we have the hidden treasure of longevity. Chapter 1902. I want to enter the longevity treasury, Chu Li said. Elder Fong was surprised. You can hear the longevity treasury and you still want to enter? Chu Li asked. Has the temple leader entered before? Of course. Elder Fong nodded. I was lucky enough to enter once. Chu Li smiled. Is the cosmic jade stamp inside? The cosmic jade stamp. Elder Fong frowned and thought for a while before shaking her head. There are too many treasures in the treasury. I really don't remember. The cosmic jade stamp is not a martial art, right? What do you want it for? Chu Li said, I once received an inheritance. It's the heavenly heart technique. Elder Fong shook her head and laughed. You have quite a lot of fortuitous encounters. Chu Li laughed. Yes, my luck has always been good, or else I wouldn't have met the bishop and entered the church. That's true. Elder Fong nodded. The heavenly heart technique, it seems to be an inheritance from the prophecy pavilion, right? Yes. Chu Li said, Unfortunately, I haven't cultivated it properly and gained nothing. I can't reach the level of the prophecy pavilion. I'm really not satisfied. If I can get the cosmic jade stamp, I heard it can improve the heavenly heart technique. The cosmic jade stamp and the heavenly heart technique are not on the same level. Elder Fong shook her head and laughed. But it's useless for you to get the cosmic jade stamp. It seems to be only the lower part. The upper part might be in the stargazing pavilion. We can't afford to offend them. Chu Li was surprised. Is the stargazing pavilion that powerful? The strength of the stargazing pavilion is not in their martial arts, but in their foresight. They can predict good or bad luck, and they can plot against people without leaving a trace. Elder Fong shook her head. We can't afford to offend them. Chu Li said, the lower part is enough. I don't want to learn the cosmic jade stamp. I only want to use it to understand the heavenly heart technique and improve it. It's enough if I can cultivate it. That's true. Elder Fong nodded slowly. Chu Li said, if I offer the heavenly heart technique I got to the temple, can I enter the longevity treasury? In his opinion, the heavenly heart art was very simple. Moreover, the pavilion of heavenly secrets posed no threat to him. They could not be counted on him, so he could offer up the first half of the heavenly heart art. If he could obtain the heavenly star jade stamp, that would be for the best. He urgently needed to cultivate the revolving wheel pagoda and the heavenly star void technique in seclusion. However, no matter how he thought about it, the condensation of the revolving wheel pagoda was not something that could be achieved in 2 or 3 days. On the other hand, the heavenly star void technique could be improved through epiphany. As long as he obtained the heavenly star jade stamp, he believed that his heavenly star void technique would instantly improve. After the heavenly star void technique was upgraded, it would be greatly beneficial to the forging of the wheel pagoda. It could increase the forging speed, and it might even be able to deduce the profoundness of the patterns on the heart of Azura and find the Azura's weakness. If the Heavenly Star Insight technique was merely a Grandmaster's martial art, he would not have such confidence. Otherwise, the creator of the Heavenly Star Insight technique would have found the Azura's weakness. It was said that the Heavenly Star Insight technique was not a Grandmaster's martial art, which was why he had a sliver of hope. Heavenly Heart technique. Elder Fong frowned and thought about it. There did not seem to be such a martial art in the church. The Heavenly Heart technique came from the Stargazing Pavilion and was a branch of the Stargazing Pavilion. Although its power was not as powerful as the stargazing technique, it should not be underestimated. The divine mystery pavilion's momentum in the past 100 years was extremely strong, and there were signs of it becoming one of the 8 major sects in the Food Dynasty. This was all due to the power of the Heavenly Heart technique. Chu said, "However, it seems that I did not obtain the complete Heavenly Heart technique. I only obtained half of it. That's the little lacking," Elder Fong said disappointedly. "I'll go and ask the bishop." Chu fist saluted. "I'll bring the Ming grass to Senior Gua," Elder Fong said. Chu nodded and Fist saluted gratefully. Elder Fong left gracefully, while Chu returned to his courtyard. The courtyard was clean and tidy. It was obvious that someone had cleaned it. It must be Lu Jun. He smiled and sat in the pavilion in the courtyard. He thought about whether he could enter the longevity treasure. If he could really enter, it would be a relief. He did not need to make any great contributions. It was a pity that he could not hand over the entire Heavenly Heart technique. Otherwise, it would arouse Song Jifan's suspicion. Song Jifan was not a fool. He was smarter than most people. The Heavenly Heart technique was the secret of the Prophecy Pavilion. Once the complete heart technique was leaked, it would arouse the Prophecy Pavilion senses. They would track him down. How could he escape? Bailey Na had long fallen into the hands of the Prophecy Pavilion. The first half of the Heavenly Heart technique would not arouse the Prophecy Pavilion senses. After all, the most powerful part of the Heavenly Heart technique was the later part. The earlier part was just the foundation. Its power was limited. It was not a threat to the Prophecy Pavilion. Chu brewed his own tea. After the tea was boiled, he poured it and tasted it gently. He looked relaxed and at ease. He actually sensed that someone was spying on him. It was the most powerful celestial being in the church, Song Sizu. He pretended not to know and sipped his tea leisurely. His thoughts turned. The news of the martial arts world hegemony had spread in the martial arts world. Almost everyone knew about it. The martial arts world hegemony was hosted by the major sects of each country. The Tempest Temple of the Ji Dynasty, the Goddess Attraction Mountain of the Fu Dynasty, the Reincarnation Temple of the Qiu Dynasty, and the Black Tortoise Mountain of the Zheng Dynasty had not been released. The specific rules had not been released yet. They were still being discussed. However, many martial arts masters could not wait any longer. They rubbed their palms together and wanted to fight for a good reputation. As long as they could get a high ranking in the martial arts world hegemony, they would be famous all over the world. They would become influential figures. None of the martial arts masters could resist this temptation. There was no first place in literature or second place in martial arts. None of the martial arts masters would admit defeat. Bailey Na, Elder Fong's voice suddenly came from outside. Chu quickly opened the door. He turned sideways and invited Elder Fong in to sit in the gazebo. Elder Fong took out a thin book from her sleeve and passed it to Chu. "This is the unique Heavenly King technique." Chu was overjoyed. He closed fist saluted. "Thank you, Temple Leader. There's no need to thank me." Elder Fong waved her hand. Chu showed a grateful expression. Elder Fong personally gave Gui Zhongjing the cloudy grass to prevent Gui Zhongjing from going back on his words. As an ordinary follower, Chu could not do anything about it. However, Elder Fong was different. After all, she was the temple leader. Elder Fong said, "The bishop has agreed. If you can give us the first half of the Heavenly Heart technique, you can enter the longevity treasure to have a look. You can only look at the Heavenly Astra Jade stamp and not take it away. Even if you give us the entire Heavenly Heart technique, you can exchange for the Heavenly Astra Jade stamp." Chu was overjoyed. He closed fist saluted. "Thank you, Temple Leader. Thank you, Bishop." Elder Fong waved her hand. If it wasn't for Guo Zhongjing's plea, the bishop might not have agreed. After all, the longevity treasure is unusual. Chu frowned. "Senior Guo?" Elder Fong said, "Maybe he's grateful that you found the cloudy grass. That's why he made an exception and said a few good words. It's a small favor." Chu smiled. "Then I have to thank Senior Guo. Although it's a small favor, he still helped you," Elder Fong said. Chu slowly said, "Yes." Based on his understanding of Guo Zhongjing, It was impossible for him to help him. Was the cloudy grass that important to him? It seemed that once Guo Zhongjing broke through a level, his strength would increase tremendously. He had to be careful. Let's go tomorrow. Elder Fong stood up. Chu Li sent her out and returned to the courtyard excitedly. Chapter 1903. The night was like water. He sat in his hut and opened the booklet of the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King and began to read its heart technique. The Ultimate King of the Heavenly King was able to support the Heavenly King palm and form a temple. It was naturally a powerful martial art. Even if it was not as good as the ageless longevity technique, it would not be able to support a temple. After reading it carefully, he closed the book and pondered. From the supreme technique of the Heavenly King, he saw a trace of the supreme Vajra scripture. Although it was not as exquisite as the supreme Vajra scripture, it was simpler and more direct. Although it was not as powerful as the supreme Vajra palm, it required less inner energy. Every palm of the supreme diamond scripture required all his strength. If he did not have a life and death scripture, he could only use one palm. With the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King palm did not require much inner energy. This was also the greatest advantage of the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King. Cultivating the Heavenly King palm alone required all his inner energy to unleash its full power. With the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King, there was no need to do so. The power of the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King was obvious, but it was useless to Chu Li. However, there was a great advantage that he could pass it on to Pang Shiji. The Supreme Diamond Scripture was not suitable to be passed on to others. Even his own disciple, the Ultimate King of the Heavenly King, could be passed on to Pang Shiji. Although Pang Shiji was enlightened in swordsmanship, he was not a genius. He did not improve as fast as Chu Li. Now that his inner energy was profound, he could best use his fists and palms. The cloud-slashing palm could do it, and so could the Heavenly King palm. The next morning, after he had breakfast, Zhu Jun ran over. "Elder Bai, why did you come back?" Zhu Jun angrily sat at the stone table in the gazebo and poured himself a cup of tea. He did not care that the tea was hot and drank it in one gulp. Chu Li smiled and sat down. "Why aren't you coming back? You shouldn't have come back." Zhu Jun scoffed. "Would I still be alive if I came back?" Chu Li said. After a while, their anger should have subsided. "It's not a big conflict. You underestimate their memory." Zhu Jun scoffed. "You shouldn't have come back anyway." Chu Li nodded. "That's true. The conflict between everyone and the Celestials has been intense recently, right? With the sect master personally coming out to suppress them, everyone has resigned themselves to fate." Zhu Jun shook his head and sighed, revealing an indignant expression. "I really don't understand why sect master is protecting them and not helping our own people. Maybe it's because we're on the same side," Chu Li said. Zhu Jun nodded. "Sect leader also said that, but this is too aggrieving. Now that I've returned, I'll be leaving soon." Chu Li said, "I still have things to settle outside. Brother Zhu, do you want to come with me?" "Forget it. I still need to cultivate in peace." Zhu Jun shook his head. In the end, their martial arts are still not good enough. If our martial arts surpass them, let's see if they can still be so arrogant. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Chu Li went forward and opened the door. A lady in green stood outside the door. She smiled sweetly. "Brother Bai Li, come with me." "Thank you." Chu Li fist saluted. Zhu Jun hid in the pagoda and did not come out. It seemed that he was afraid of the lady in green beside Elder Fong. Chu Li did not need to turn his head. The omniscient mirror had already seen it clearly. He could see that Zhu Jun was uncomfortable. He did not say anything more and went straight out of the courtyard with the lady in green. Soon, they arrived in front of forest. The lady in green smiled sweetly. "It's inside. You can go in by yourself." Chu Li fist saluted and walked in without saying much. The lady in green looked at his back and smiled. She turned around and left. It was a mixed forest. It was very inconspicuous. Every tree was so tall that almost all the light in the forest was blocked. There was no road. It seemed that no one had set foot here. However, Chuli could keenly sense a trace. He followed the trace forward and arrived in front of a giant tree. This giant tree had been struck by lightning. It seemed to be withered, but there were still a few sprouts growing. The withered tree had regained its spring. He stood in front of the giant tree and fist saluted. "I'm Baili Na. You're Baili Na?" An old man suddenly floated down from the giant tree. His bald head was shiny, and his eyes were as bright as his bald head. Chuli did not notice it earlier. This giant tree obviously contained a very mysterious formation. He was shocked and became more careful. "Yes," Chuli said in a deep voice. "Greetings, Senior. I've been ordered to enter the longevity treasure to take a look." "Got it." The old man looked normal and had a medium build. He would not attract any attention in a crowd. He waved his hand and said coldly, "Follow me." After he said that, he leaped up to the top of the tree. Chuli followed closely behind him and leaped up. The old man continued to leap up. With another leap, he leaped from the top of the tree into the void and disappeared. Chuli did not hesitate and leaped up. His eyes suddenly opened up. He had already stepped into a giant palace. The palace was filled with jewels. The chairs and tables were filled with all kinds of treasures. Even the patterns on the palace's windows and walls were treasures. Chuli squinted his eyes. Everything in front of him was not an illusion. The longevity treasure was obviously in the air and hidden in a formation. No one could find it. If the old man did not appear in front of him, Chuli would not have sensed the existence of this palace. "You can choose whatever you want," the old man said calmly and sat on the armchair in the middle of the palace. He closed his eyes lazily and then snorted as if he had fallen asleep. Chuli raised his eyebrows. The old man's skill was not very profound. He was only at the standard of a grandmaster. He was already a rare master in the outside world, but it did not seem to be enough to guard the longevity treasure. It seemed like the longevity church was very confident about the longevity treasure's formation and was not afraid of people breaking in. Chuli did not disturb him anymore. He began to search along the left side of the palace. He quickly looked around, but did not find the cosmic jade metal. Instead, he found a Buddhist pagoda. This small pagoda looked exquisite, yet it was simple and unadorned. It exuded a peaceful aura, causing one's mind to involuntarily calm down. Chuli raised his eyebrows. This was a rare Buddhist treasure. He did not know how it was related to the chakram pagoda that he was condensing. If he could get his hands on this, he could probably shorten the time needed to condense the chakram pagoda. The longevity church really had many good things. The longevity church had made him salivate the last time. It was the same this time. He hoped to enter the longevity church again and obtain a few other treasures, such as the bloodstone that made the little beast restless and the heart protection badge that tempted him. Unfortunately, it was difficult to find an opportunity, and he needed to contribute to the longevity church to enter. He focused on the Buddhist pagoda and wanted to explore it, but realized that an invisible force was blocking him. The old man opened his eyes and said, "You can only see but not explore. Whatever treasure you find is your luck. You can't blame anyone else." Chuli nodded. It could actually block his omniscient mirror's observation. The formation in this palace was indeed mysterious. All the treasures in front of him were protected. He could only see them with his eyes and touch them with his hands. He could not explore them with his spirit. Chapter 1904. Chuli continued to search, but he could not find the star jade stamp. He remembered the star jade stamp's appearance very clearly. It was not here. He looked up at the elder and closed fist saluted. "May I ask if this is all the hidden treasures?" "Of course." The elder opened his eyes and said, "Why? Do you think it's not enough?" Without waiting for Chuli to speak, he pointed his finger at the surroundings and scoffed. "Everything here is a priceless treasure. Any one of them can set off a bloodbath. How can you not be interested in them, kid?" Chuli said, "I'm looking for the star jade stamp." "Star jade stamp?" The elder frowned. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" He stood up and went to a cupboard. He pulled open a drawer and took out a palm-sized jade pendant. He passed it to Chu Li. For you. Chu Li looked at the jade pendant in confusion. It was different from a star jade stamp he had seen. It was obviously a normal jade pendant. Why, you don't want it? The elder said impatiently. This is the star jade stamp. Don't you know? Chu Li shook his head. It can't be. It can't be wrong. The elder said, treasures hide themselves. You look at it, but it contains the mystery of the star jade stamp. Do you want to take it? Chu Li frowned and stared at him for a while before reaching out to take it. The elder scoffed. All the treasures here are priceless. This is the only one that's not even worth a fart. Chu Li shook his head. To those who want it, it's priceless too. Who's going to learn the Bullsh *T stargazing technique? The elder curled his lips and said impatiently. It's all life-shortening stuff. Those who learn it won't have a good ending. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything. The elder seemed to have noticed the disapproval in Chu Li's expression. He scoffed. Why, you're not convinced? Chu Li said, the disciples of Stargazing Pavilion have a good ending. Then, which disciple of Stargazing Pavilion have a long life? The elder said impatiently. All of them have short life. This is the consequence of cultivating the stargazing technique. Chu Li was deep in thought. Although the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion did not die accidentally, their lifespans were usually not long. They would die before they were 200 years old, which was considered to be short-lived. However, there was an advantage to being a disciple of the Stargazing Pavilion. As long as they reached the Grand Master's boundary, they could ascend to the Grand Master's boundary after their death. Just like the Holy Church of Light, they were able to ascend to the Outland before the arrival of the Celestials. Therefore, the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion did not take the stargazing technique's shortcomings too seriously. Anyway, if you're smart, don't practice it. You're already so old. You won't have many years to live if you practice the stargazing art. The elder scoffed. Although the heaven beyond heaven is not bad, the world is different now. It's better not to go there. Chu Li nodded and gave a fist salute in thanks. He slowly held the jade pendant, but a strong sense of danger welled up in him. This feeling made him hesitate for a long time. He felt that it was better to stay away from it. The old man saw him staring at the jade pendant hesitantly and scoffed. You can only look at it. You can't take it out. Chu Li nodded. The old man said, What? You still think it's fake? Chu Li muttered. Has anyone touched this jade pendant? No. The old man shook his head and scoffed. No one can be interested in this thing. Ever since we entered Tibet, you're the first. Chu Li slowly nodded. What are you waiting for? The old man was getting more curious about Chu Li's actions. Chu Li shook his head. I don't think it's right. It doesn't seem like the real star jade medallion. Nonsense. The old man glared at him and snatched the jade pendant. I can't be wrong. As he spoke, he wiped the jade pendant with his hand. Suddenly, there was a flash of light. The jade pendant suddenly changed color from a dull white to a dark blue. It was as if a jade pendant was smeared on it. See? How can this be fake? Chu Li raised his eyebrows. It really looked like the star jade medallion. However, it gave him a strong sense of danger. He did not dare to casually look into it. He trusted his intuition. The old man passed it to him. There's no problem now, right? Chu Li smiled. Forget it. I'll look at something else. All right. The old man scoffed. But you can only look at it. You can't take it away. This is what the bishop instructed. Yes. Chu Li nodded. His gaze was still on the pagoda. He began to visualize the appearance of the pagoda in his mind, so that every detail would appear clearly in his mind. Even if he could not get its spirit, he could at least visualize its form. Unfortunately, the pagoda seemed to have a layer of invisible, strange energy that prevented him from visualizing it clearly. Chu Li felt that it was more mysterious. Just like the wheel pagoda, this invisible force was what he was most interested in. Unfortunately, he still could not get it after trying for a long time. It's about time, right? The old man opened his eyes and said, You've stayed long enough. It's time to leave. Chu Li slowly nodded and gently put the pagoda down. The old man said, This is the Merit Pagoda. It's a real wonder. You can't get it. Chu Li asked, What's the use of this pagoda? I don't know. The old man shook his head. I only know that it's not from this world. It's said to be from the higher heaven realm. It's not the Grand Master? Chu Li looked interested. The old man scoffed. It's not. Chu Li sighed. It's such a waste to hide this pagoda here. It should be allowed to see the light of day and put to good use. Impossible. The old man shook his head. This pagoda is one of the most precious treasures in the secret treasure. There's almost no chance for it to see the light of day again. You don't have to look at it. It's useless. Chu Li nodded. Let's go. The old man gestured for Chu Li to leave. Chu Li looked at the dark blue jade pendant on the table. The jade pendant still gave him a strong sense of danger. It was unwise to get close to it. However, he was unwilling to come in and leave with nothing. The old man smiled faintly. Why? You still want to see the cosmic jade medallion? Chu Li sighed. I think the cosmic jade medallion is fake. Nonsense. The old man shook his head. Chu Li said, why don't we try throwing it? If it breaks, it's fake. If it doesn't break, it's real. More nonsense. The old man scoffed. Who said the cosmic jade medallion won't break? Chu Li smiled. I heard it's made of a strange material from the Grandmaster. It won't break. Never heard of it. The old man shook his head. Chu Li said, let's give it a try. What if it breaks? The old man said impatiently, hurry up and leave. It's fine if you don't want to see it. Chu Li thought about it and shook his head. Forget it. Since it's fake, there's no point in looking at it. I'll leave now. His intuition and the heavenly star void insight technique were warning him of danger. Even if his heart was itching, he would not take this strange risk. Even if he had the life and death scripture, he did not want to test where this sense of danger came from. Then let's go. The old man stood up and walked out. Before Chu Li left, he took another deep look at the cosmic jade medallion and turned to follow the old man. When they were about to reach the gate of the palace, the old man suddenly said, do you think the jade pendant is dangerous? Chu Li nodded. Chapter 1905. Chu Li was startled and fell in a deep thought. Could it be that he felt threatened because of this? The heavenly star void insight technique circulated rapidly. He stared at the elder for a moment, then at the dark blue jade pendant. Finally, he shook his head slowly. Forget it. I don't think this is the heavenly star jade pendant I want to see. Are you really willing? The elder sneered. I dare say that no one can resist the temptation. You'll have to see it eventually. Why make things difficult for yourself? Chu Li said, forget it. Goodbye. All right, let's go. The elder nodded. This might be your only chance to enter this place. I don't know how lucky you'll be the next time. Chu Li smiled. It's actually not that difficult. You don't know how lucky you are. The elder sneered. I don't mind telling you that the number of our disciples who have entered the longevity treasure can be counted on one hand. As for those who have entered twice, there are less than 3. What makes you think you're stronger than them? Haven't Hall Leader Fan been here twice? Chu Li asked. No. The elder shook his head. She's only been here once. She was lucky enough to obtain a treasure that could increase her cultivation level. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to become a hall leader. Chu Li nodded. I think I can still enter. We'll meet again. All right, I'll have to see. The elder sneered. Chu Li fist saluted and walked out. The more the elder forced him to look at the heavenly star jade pendant, the more he felt that it was strange. It was a trap. It was better not to look at it. Since it was a trap, it must be a trap that could deal with him. No matter how brave he would not be fooled. He was fearless. The older one was, the more timid they became. As Chu Li's martial arts became stronger, he became more careful. He would not do anything that the heavenly star insight and his intuition told him not to do. He suppressed his curiosity and the urge to challenge himself. The elder squinted his eyes as he watched Chu Li walk out. He shook his head and sighed. Fine. If that's the case, it's up to you. Let's go. As he finished speaking, he strode in front of them. Just as he was about to step out of the palace gate, the old man's expression suddenly changed. He clutched his chest and slowly fell down. Chu Li's expression changed as well. He quickly went forward to support him and asked, Senior? The old man's face was sallow. He waved his hand, indicating for him to calm down. What happened? Chuli asked in a low voice. The old man sighed and helped him to sit on the floor tiles of the palace. He took a deep breath and said, "It's an old problem. I'll be fine after a while." Chuli asked, "Are you all right?" "I won't die." The elder's body was trembling slightly. He was indescribably weak, like a candle that would be extinguished by a gust of wind. Chuli said helplessly, "It seems that Senior's injury is not light." "Is it an old injury?" The old man nodded and said, "It's the root of the illness that I had when I was young. I haven't been able to cure it. I've lived for more than 100 years by relying on this longevity treasure. Now, I can die without regrets." Chuli smiled. "Senior, it's better not to say such inauspicious things. If I really die," the old man frowned and said, "the only thing I can't let go of is this place." "Is there any treasure that you can't let go of, Senior?" Chuli asked. "The guardian of the longevity treasure can only be passed down to one person." The old man sighed. "If I suddenly pass away, I'm afraid that the guardian of the longevity treasure will die. That would be a great sin." Chuli said, "Senior, you should find an heir as soon as possible." "Sigh, I don't know if I can make it in time." The old man shook his head. "If I die, there will be no one to protect it. Anyone can take away the longevity treasure. The formation on the treasure won't be activated anymore." Chuli raised his eyebrows. "The formation on the treasure was activated by you, Senior?" The old man nodded. "If it wasn't for me, no one would be able to trace the treasure away." Chuli sighed and said, "It seems that Senior is really important. Is it urgent now?" "It's fine." The old man shook his head. Chuli said, "Senior, you should take care of yourself. I'll come back again." He got up and walked out after he finished speaking. The old man furrowed his eyebrows and stared at his back. He watched as he strode to the palace door, opened the door, and stepped out. Then he disappeared without a trace. As soon as Chuli left, two people slowly appeared beside the old man. Song Jifan and a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes stared at the palace door. They turned to look at the old man and then looked at each other. "Senior Song, are you relieved now?" Song Jifan asked. Song Sizu frowned and stared at the palace door. He looked at the dark blue jade pendant and said slowly, "Something's wrong. Senior Song, if it was someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to do what Bailey Na did, right?" Song Jifan laughed and said, "Although Bailey Na is sly and unusually alert, you don't have to worry about his temperament. He once risked his life to save me and Elder Fong. He clearly wanted to see the heavenly astral jade tablet. Why did he let it go?" Song Sizu asked in a low voice. "There's a formation blocking it." "He can't see it," Song Jifan said. Song Sizu shook his head. Elder Lu was in such a situation, and he didn't have any evil thoughts. That shouldn't be the case. "Bailey Na is a person with principles," Song Jifan said. "He knows what he can take and what he can't. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lived until now. Bailey Na was able to live well and live alone. He had his own set of principles, and this set of principles protected him from being harmed." Looking at the way he did things now, it was obvious. "All right," Song Sizu nodded slowly. "Then he passes." Song Jifan smiled. "Then bring him into the real longevity treasure. The longevity treasure is controlled by the bishop." "We have no right to interfere," Song Sizu said. Song Jifan smiled. However, he cursed in his heart. He had no right to interfere, and yet he caused such a scene? No one was more nosy than him. However, although he cursed in his heart, he did not show it on his face. After all, this Song Sizu was the elder ancestor's subordinate. Even if he didn't give face to the monk, he still had to give face to the Buddha. He couldn't make things too ugly. He had to endure everything and wait for them to return to the realm beyond Avalon. It wouldn't take long. "Does the bishop want to participate in the martial arts competition?" Song Sizu walked out. "Of course." Song Jifan nodded. "If we can enter such a grand event, the longevity sect won't have to worry about a lack of talents." Song Sizu said, "Then the bishop must be careful. Many of the celestials who came this time have extremely secret inheritances. Many of these secret inheritances have been lost in this world. However, if they are not lost, They must not be underestimated. I'll be careful. Song Jifan nodded slowly. He had already cultivated a divine technique. He could even fight against Chu Li, let alone others. After Chu Li stepped out of the palace door, his body suddenly descended and he appeared in midair. After falling for more than 20 meters like a stone, his body suddenly slowed down and he slowly landed on the top of a giant tree. Then, he stepped on the top of the tree and left the forest. After leaving the forest, his sense of danger only dissipated. He let out a sigh of relief. He did not regret not using the Heaven Astral Jade Medallion. He concluded that it was a trap. Chapter 1906. In the beginning, he could not see through the old man's mind, so he did not know what was going on. He was dubious, but the old man's expression made him suspicious. The more he wanted him to search for the heavenly Astra Jade stamp, the more alert he became. However, the old man suddenly pretended to be sick, as if he was injured. In fact, the old man was really injured, and his injuries were acting up perfectly. There was no way to tell that he was faking it. Unfortunately, this gave Chu Li a good opportunity. The omniscient mirror immediately saw through the old man's thoughts. The old man did not know much, as he was only following orders. Moreover, he was indeed the guardian of the longevity treasure. The only difference was that the palace was not the hidden treasure of longevity. Instead, it was another hidden treasure. However, the treasures in the treasure were real. This showed how rich the longevity church was. They had countless treasures that made people drool. From time to time, Chu Li would have the urge to snatch the floating mountain or directly kill Song Jifan. Then, he could disguise himself as Song Jifan and take over the floating mountain. That way, he would not have to worry about anything anymore. He would not have to work so hard to activate the blood dragon tree. He had to produce 3 rounds of fruits in one go. It had taken a lot of his energy. Thinking about it, he could not help but feel a lingering fear. He did not want to experience it again. With these treasures, his subordinate strength would skyrocket. They would be strong even without the blood dragon fruit. Unfortunately, Song Wuji's existence made him hesitate. He didn't dare to kill Song Jifan, nor could he take the floating mountain for himself. He believed that many people had the same idea and wanted to take over the floating mountain, but they were powerless. Meanwhile, that Heavenly Star Jade stamp was fake, and it looked exactly the same as the Heavenly Star Jade stamp. However, there was a powerful formation within it, and once one entered it, they would be seriously injured. That was a power that could harm heavenly deities. The omniscient mirror saw all of this in a flash. He felt lucky that he restrained his greed and did not recklessly search for the blue jade. Otherwise, he would have died in the treasure. He landed outside the forest and turned to look at the forest. He shook his head and returned to his courtyard. Lu Jun was waiting in his courtyard. When he saw him, he put down his teacup and smiled. "Did you enter the longevity treasure?" Chu Li nodded and shook his head. "What do you mean?" Lu Jun was confused. Chu Li sighed. "I did enter the longevity treasure, but unfortunately, I didn't find what I was looking for. There's no heavenly astral jade stamp at all. What a waste." Lu Jun asked in surprise. "What are you looking for? You can't find it?" "Heaven Star Jade Badge," Chu Li said. "Unfortunately, it's fake." "Impossible." Lu Jun shook his head decisively. "There are no fake treasures in the longevity vault." Chu Li said, "I'm not mistaken. That's definitely not the cosmic jade metal. Do you know what the Heavenly Star Jade stamp looks like?" Lu Jun scoffed. "As if I've really seen it before." Chu Li hesitated for a moment before he slowly nodded. "I've seen it before. Where have I seen it before?" "In the hands of a disciple from the Stargazing Pavilion." "Oh, Li Xinghe, you're really amazing to have met such a genius." Lu Jun exclaimed in surprise. Li Xinghe is a very mysterious fellow. It's said that he's a genius among the disciples of the Stargazing Pavilion of this generation, surpassing even his father. Chu Li said, "I met him by chance and saw the Heaven Star Jade stamp before. That's why I'm looking for the second half of the Heaven Star Jade stamp. Could it be that you've cultivated the first half of the Heaven's Star Jade stamp?" Lu Jun asked. Chu Li smiled bitterly. I've cultivated a mystical technique from the stargazing pavilion called the Heavenly Heart Technique. However, I'm not lucky enough to cultivate the Heaven Star Jade Stamp. The Heavenly Heart Technique is already very powerful. Lu Jun revealed an envious expression. It said that after cultivating it, you'll be able to predict the future. It's truly a mystical technique. Moreover, it's very difficult to cultivate and requires an extremely high aptitude. Can you really cultivate it? Chuli nodded. As expected of Elder Bai, Lu Jun gave him thumbs up. Chuli shook his head and broke into laughter. The two of them chatted and laughed. Chuli was using Lu Jun to dispel his doubts. Song Sizu's gaze was still lingering there. He had yet to dispel his suspicions. As long as he did not dispel his suspicions, it would be difficult for him to enter the true longevity vault. This was something that could not be helped no matter how strong his martial arts was. He could only use this method to dispel their suspicions. After chatting with Lu Jun for a while, Chuli arrived at the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Elder Fong was reading a dossier in the hall. When she saw him enter, she waved for him to come forward. Chuli closed fists, saluted, and walked forward. He weakly called out to the hall leader. "What's going on?" Elder Fong frowned and looked at him. "Didn't you see the Heaven's Star Jade Stamp?" Chuli shook his head. "It's fake." Elder Fong's reaction was exactly the same as Lu Jun's. She flatly denied it. "Impossible. There's definitely no fake treasures in the longevity vault." Chuli sighed. "I've seen the real one. This is definitely a fake. Don't panic. I'll ask the bishop." Elder Fong's face darkened. Her subordinate took out the Heavenly Heart Technique in exchange for the Heaven Star Jade Stamp. In the end, the Heaven Star Jade Stamp was fake. Moreover, the Heavenly Heart Technique had already been given out. No matter how she looked at it, it was a farce. She was the hall leader. How could she not help her subordinate? How could she tolerate such a thing? Even if she did not pursue the matter of the Heaven Star Jade Stamp, she still had to provide other forms of compensation. Chuli closed fist, saluted weakly. Elder Fong floated away. Chuli stood in the basilica, motionless like a statue. He seemed to be deep in thought. He felt that if Elder Fong were to take action, Song Jifan would have some scruples. He would not test him because of Song Sizu's words. After a quarter of an hour, Elder Fong floated back and said slowly, "You didn't go to the longevity vault. It was another vault. It's a test for you. Anyone who enters the longevity vault has to pass this test." Chuli frowned. "It doesn't matter if it's the longevity vault. I just want a Heaven Star Jade Stamp. It's the same if I get it from another vault. I don't have to enter the longevity vault. But why is it fake? Only if it's fake can I see your character." Elder Fong scoffed. D***M in the rules. It should be real this time. "It's real." Chuli was dubious. Elder Fong said, "Don't worry. It's definitely real this time." Chuli sighed. "Palace leader, this is too. Even if it's a test, it doesn't have to be like this, right?" Elder Fong saw his dissatisfaction and said, "Everyone has experienced this person. Rules are rules. You're not the only one who has been fooled." "All right then." Chuli tried his best to cheer up. "When can I enter the longevity vault?" "Today." Elder Fong said, "Go now. It's the place you went to before." Chuli closed fists, saluted without saying anything more. He turned around and went to the forest. He jumped to the treetop and jumped again. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. It was another palace. Compared to the previous palace, this palace seemed to be half the size. It was simple and unadorned. There was no luxury at all. It was not eye-catching either. The old man from before stood in front of the palace. He looked at Chu Li and nodded. "Come in." Chu Li closed fists, saluted. "How's your injury?" "It's no big deal." The old man scoffed. Chapter 1907. Chuli fists saluted and followed him inside. There were only a dozen items in the basilica: a long sword, a long blade, a dagger, a pagoda, and a blue stone. Chuli's gaze focused on the blue stone. He recognized it as a star stone at first glance. He did not expect to see a star stone here, and it was different from the ones he had seen before. It was more dazzling, more blue, and more attractive to him. He could not wait to get his hands on it. All of his instincts and the cosmic insight skill were reminding him that he must get his hands on this star stone after he took it. Chuli pointed at the star stone. "Senior, what is this?" "A star stone." The old man's expression was indifferent, as if he did not treat it as a treasure. "A useless stone that fell from the sky. It's useless, but because it's rare, I used it to make up the numbers." Chuli said, "It's really a beautiful stone." "What's the point of it being beautiful?" The old man said, "Even a person like your temple leader who loves beauty didn't choose it. It's just a decoration after all." Chuli wanted to take the star stone right away. "Senior, can I take it?" "No." The old man said, "No matter how useless it is, it's still a treasure in the longevity treasure. Your contribution is only enough for you to see the cosmic jade badge. You won't be able to take anything else. It's better for you to behave." "Sigh." Chuli shook his head and sighed reluctantly. The old man scoffed. "You're not a woman. Why are you taking this thing?" Chuli said helplessly, "It's good to look at." The old man shut his mouth and said no more. He brought him to a shelf and pointed at a dull jade pendant. "This is the real heavenly star jade pendant. If you still don't believe me, then I can't do anything about it." Chuli raised his eyebrows and picked up the palm-sized white jade pendant. "Do you believe it's real?" The old man scoffed. Chuli nodded. "It's real. You can sense it?" The old man frowned and stared at him. Chuli smiled. "I've cultivated the heavenly heart technique. My senses are quite accurate. All right, I'll give you an hour. You can stay here and study it." The old man shook his head and said, "If you can't figure anything out in 2 hours, then you can't blame others. In any case, this is a legendary item. No one knows if it is the heavenly star, jade medallion, or not." "Senior, you don't know?" Chuli smiled. The old man said, "Those who can come to the longevity treasury are all unfathomable. I can't see through them with my meager abilities." Chuli closed fists, saluted, and said no more. It was hard to say if he could understand it in 2 hours. The old man turned around and walked out, quickly leaving the hall. Chuli's gaze quickly swept across the many treasures. He did not have to destroy the Changshan denomination. If he pretended to be Song Jifan and took a few treasures, no one would know. Even if Song Jifan found out, he could only suffer in silence. He could not complain to Song Wuji, could he? His thoughts surged, and he felt that it was feasible. However, he needed to fully understand how to take away the treasures. Even Song Jifan could not simply take it and leave. He needed to go through a process, and he might even need to use a secret code. He needed to find a chance to teach Song Jifan a lesson. Now that Song Jifan had cultivated some kind of divine technique, he had to be careful. Chuli still needed to complete the solidification of the Chakram Pagoda as soon as possible. He had already realized that every time he solidified a layer of the Chakram Pagoda, his skill would increase by a level. He immediately got rid of the distracting thoughts and focused on improving the Heavenly Star Insight technique first. Thus, he began to explore the white jade pendant with his spirit. There was an invisible layer of obstruction. He squinted his eyes and pierced the pendant with the god-punishing thunder sword. Bang! It was like a sudden clap of thunder. His ears were ringing and his vision blurred. It was as if the world was shaking violently. He took a deep breath and activated the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture to get rid of all kinds of abnormalities. It turned out to be his own illusion. This was caused by the white jade pendant. The god-punishing thunder sword could not break the invisible power in the white jade pendant. He did not believe it and released the god-punishing thunder sword again. Boom! Amidst the explosion, he felt as if the thunder had fallen on him. His whole body felt numb, and he almost collapsed to the ground. After the Mahavairocana's immobility scripture was activated, his hallucinations disappeared. He withdrew his spirit and looked at the white jade pendant. He frowned and pondered. Why was the defensive power in the white jade pendant so strong? It seemed that this was not the doing of the longevity treasure or the elder from before. It must have been the doing of the white jade pendant itself. It was no wonder that the elder could not comprehend it. It was indeed a natural moat that could not be broken. Chuli thought about it and shot out 3 god-punishing thunder swords at the same time. Boom! He lost all his senses at once. He could not hear or see anything. He could not even feel his own existence. It was as if his spirit had disappeared as well. There was only blankness and calmness in his heart. He immediately activated the Mahavarokana's immobility scripture and slowly regained his senses. He felt that a long time had passed, but it was only a moment. He felt a lingering fear in his heart. If it was not for the Mahavarokana's immobility scripture, he would have become an idiot and died. This white jade pendant was too vicious. He could not help but think of Song Wuji's name. He knew that this was derived from the heavenly star insight skill and the omniscient mirror. The person who set up this restriction was Song Wuji. Chuli became more fearful. This Song Wuji was really powerful. If it was not for his soul that was much stronger than ordinary people and the many secret skills he had cultivated, he would have fallen for it and become an idiot. Song Wuji's method was too vicious to kill without leaving a trace. He could not be bothered to think about Song Wuji anymore. His spirit went into the heavenly star jade medallion again. Pictures and human figures flashed clearly in his mind and were imprinted in his mind. "It's time." The elder opened the door and said. Chuli trembled and slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were still blank, as if he did not know where he was. It was as if he had just woken up from a long dream. The elder looked at him and could not help but be surprised. It seemed that this fellow really understood something. The heavenly star jade medallion was not an ordinary treasure. Someone must have placed a restriction on it, and it could not be understood at all. It seemed that this fellow was really capable. "It's time. You should leave, Bailey Na." The elder approached him and extended his hand. Chuli nodded slowly and returned the white jade pendant reluctantly. The elder said, "It's good that you understood something. Don't expect too much." Chuli sighed. "It's a pity that the time was too short. I didn't get too much. But let this in." "Honorable Master Song Wuji," the elder said. Chuli nodded and thought that it was indeed Song Wuji's method. The omniscient mirror in his mind became clearer and brighter. His heavenly star insight skill had improved a lot. With just a thought, he could complete many deductions, and his speed was 10 times faster than before. He was like a fish in water when he deduced martial arts and deduced worldly affairs more accurately and quickly. Chuli felt that he'd gained a lot. This trip to the longevity treasure was not in vain. He yearned for the treasures in the longevity treasure more and more. It seemed that he had to deal with Song Ji-fan as soon as possible and obtain these treasures. Other than the starstones and the treasure, there was also a pagoda. It was similar to the pagoda in the fake longevity treasure, but smaller. It should be a set. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.